Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ask a Scientist Gaming, where we combine mediocre gameplay with expert science. I'm Ken Hansen, Associate Professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry at Florida State University. I do photochemistry/photophysicist. I shine light on molecules, and I use that light energy to do various things, move electrons, protons, energy transfer, hopefully for things like solar cells, catalysis, sensing, whatever it might be. But more importantly, joining me today is Dr. Diana Williams. Diana, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a professor in psychology and the program in neuroscience at FSU. I do behavioral neuroscience and basic behavioral neuroscience. So I'm interested in kind of fundamental questions about the neural circuitry that underlies eating behavior. So that includes food intake, how much we eat, when we choose to eat, what kind of foods we choose. Gut-brain communication is a big focus for me. And I'm also interested in how the brain is putting together all of the very diverse inputs that your brain has to put together in order to make those kinds of decisions. So I'm interested in motivation and reward and food taste and that, feeling of enjoyment and how that all comes together. And neuroscience, in a very general way.
Makes sense. What do you typically teach?
So I do, for the past several years, physiological psychology, which is kind of the other term for behavioral neuroscience. That's a upper level class that is mostly neuroscience majors these days, since we have a relatively new neuroscience major here, and some psych majors. And then I also teach the graduate systems and behavioral neuroscience class for our PhD program.
Nice. All right, equally important, what game are we starting with?
We're going to start with Untitled Goose Game.
All right, here it is, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you that haven't seen this game before, you're in for a treat. For those of you that have seen it, you're welcome. We're going to play it. So,
Okay.
do you want to briefly explain this game to the audience?
Yeah, so super simple concept. You, the player, me tonight, are a goose who is going to kind of cause trouble and harass people in a little town.
But strategically, and you have goals.
Yes,
You have
I have
milestones.
goals. I'll have a list of things I have to do, specific kinds of harassment of specific individuals. So that will include like picking things up and moving them around. And so
I love when games like this hit it big. Like you have these games where they spend like 3 years generating it and it's super, advanced, massive world. And then you have something like Untitled Goose Game that was a giant on Steam. Like it was the top selling game for a period of time.
yeah.
And people are still speedrunning it, which is kind of fun.
Yes, yeah. I'm slow on this one, but
Yeah, but you've beaten it. You've beaten it.
I
before.
have, yes. Yeah. There we go. And there's a little bit of, I would not call this game difficult, but there are some, challenges in terms of you have to kind of figure out how to do certain things, how to accomplish certain goals. So it's fun, entertaining, satisfying. And I'm not like a fighting monsters game kind of person so much. So games that are like all fighting I'm not that interested in. So this is fun for me.
So this
No
is
fighting,
you
just runs.
have directional control. You can duck. You can pick up things.
Yeah,
And
and that's about
that's
it.
it?
There's not that much else you do.
Classic. 2 buttons. That's all we need.
Yeah.
Games with more than 2 buttons. Glued Bond, welcome back to the stream. Thank you for joining us. If you guys have questions, throw them in chat. We'll let Diana settle in a little bit playing this game. I mean, you've played this one fairly recently. This is,
Yes,
yeah, this is your first time talking science while playing it.
it
presumably.
is. Yes, I normally am playing with my 9-year-old, and we don't talk about neuroscience. It's not an interest of his.
Is your 9-year-old going to judge your gameplay from this?
He might, but he goes to bed early, so he won't be watching live.
But heads up, this will be on YouTube forever. Well, until
Yes.
YouTube dies.
I told him he could watch later.
Well, shout out if you're watching. Thank you for enjoying the video. Okay, so that's your task list then?
Yes,
You have
yes. So this is the task. I've already gotten into the garden, and now I have to make the groundskeeper's life miserable for a little while.
man. So did they intentionally choose cursive to mess with Gen Z? Like, is this
Good question.
because they don't teach that anymore, right? Like
That's
it's
right. Yeah,
spaced
I
out.
did have to read all of that to my son.
I mean, you can decipher some of it from just standard, but yeah. Capital Q's. Who knew? All right, so what task are you doing right now?
So I am going to try to bring things to the picnic blanket. There's a picnic basket out here, and you're supposed to bring a bunch of things to this picnic basket. If the groundskeeper sees you doing it, he will come and get those things. So you have to be a little sneaky.
Oh, I see. They'll grab them back, so you have oppositional forces.
Yes. And it's, I think these are achievable goals, but you may have to do them several times.
So I've watched several people on Twitch speedrun this game. Based on your experience, how long would it take you to beat it if you were playing straight through?
It probably wouldn't be more than an hour. I can't imagine, because it's really not that much if you really know what you're doing and are actually good at it, which I kind of know what to do. The good at it is the question.
So what's your guess for the fastest time beating this game?
I bet somebody who knew what they were doing and knows how to control things very well might 20 minutes.
So the world record with glitches is 2 minutes and 4 seconds.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So I've watched them do it. They clip things through walls. Like, they don't have to wait for gates and things like that. They'll actually pull them and they'll like pile them up. And yeah, it's pretty impressive. Even without glitches, the top time is 11 minutes and 25 seconds. And if you want 100% the game, as in every task, it's 24 minutes and 48 seconds.
Wow.
So yeah, let's put it in context. What is the best in the world? All right. Scuzzbot, excellent question. Before diving into questions from the audience, we always like to start with one, and that is presumably, 6-year-old Diana wanted to be an astronaut or a firefighter. She did not think, I'm going to be a psychology professor in a neurosciences program playing video games on stream talking about neuroscience. So there was a lot of events that happened between then and now. And what was your progression to where you are now? What were the major milestones that you remember that fork in the road, you made a choice and that's where you are now?
Well, so I did not just come out of the womb wanting to be a neuroscientist. Neuroscience was not a thing when I was little. So I was interested in science, though, as a kid. My family are all pretty, so it's a no formal education. I'm the first person in my family to go to college.
Oh, wow. First gen.
Yeah.
First gen, wow.
But all really smart people who liked reading and kind of self-educated. So my dad and both of my grandfathers especially, my father was an auto mechanic. One of my grandfathers was a machinist. One of them was a TV radio repair person, so kind of electronics. And so they were more into physics and kind of engineering, math, versus the biology, life sciences, which is more what I do. But so I had that early kind of just always interested in talking about that sort of stuff. From when I was little and being outside. I grew up in New York City, so sometimes I have to explain to people, my backyard was concrete. It was very small and it was only concrete. And you didn't walk on people's lawns because they'd get very mad. They only have small lawn and you're not supposed to mess with it. So it wasn't like I was out hiking, all the time, but we did have parks, playgrounds, things like that. And so things like being out and, making a sundial and, kind of observing the natural world and to whatever extent that you can observe natural life in Brooklyn, bugs, squirrels, pigeons, things like that.
Yeah.
That was kind of stuff that we did. So I knew I was interested in science. And when I was in high school, I was still not sure what I wanted to do with my life, but I read a book. I don't remember the author now, but the book was called The Chemistry of Conscious States. And that
awesome.
Introduced me to neuroscience, really. It was about the neurotransmitters that kind of govern being awake, being asleep, what happens when you're dreaming in your brain. And it really just kind of I guess gave me the understanding that your brain is kind of everything. Like, it sounds like stoner philosophy, but there is nothing. There is no conscious experience. There is no reality out there that is not actually experienced through, our physiology, right? Through our perception, which is our sensory receptors.
Yeah.
And then your brain processes that information and really like creates reality. So
I mean, Descartes put it best, right? I think, therefore I am, right?
Yeah.
Like, without it, you're not. So just to follow up, J. Allen Hobson is the author.
That's
do you
the
own
book.
this book?
I do. I still have it on my shelf at work.
That's awesome. If anyone's interested, there it is in chat.
Yeah.
Shout out to Amazon who runs Twitch. So, but yeah, if you guys are interested, you'd recommend this to a casual reader?
Well, I haven't read it in 30 years, so I can't be sure. It's probably pretty outdated in terms of what we know about these topics now, but I mean, it certainly was inspiring to young Diana. So,
how old were you when you read it?
I must have been around 14, maybe. I was
Okay.
definitely in high school. So,
I mean, that's awesome. That was a key moment.
yeah. So
Follow-up question for your tenure book at FSU, they let you decide. Did you choose this?
I didn't, and that would have been a good idea. I chose a book that was about the caudal brainstem, or about the brainstem, which is the area of the brain that I did all of my graduate work on, and a lot of my work even currently.
That's awesome. Milestone books are really, really fun. So yeah, if you guys are interested, there it is in chat. All right, so you read this book and it changed your view of the world.
Yeah, it definitely made me think that the brain and neuroscience, which was not a thing at the time, actually. It was physiological psychology, probably was the closest that you could come. The term neuroscience, probably there were some people who used the term, but there were no neuroscience programs. You could be a biology major, you could be a psychology major. And there were people in psychology who studied the biological basis of behavior, which is what I did. I went on to college to be a psychology major, and deciding between psychology and biology was, I didn't know, at least in the place where I was, at Brooklyn College in New York. This is a city university in New York. I didn't know of anybody in biology who did neuro kind of stuff, who did brain stuff, but there were people in psychology who were doing physiological psychology and interested in behavior, but really that brain basis for behavior. So psychology was partly because I kind of saw people doing the sort of research that I thought would be cool, but also I honestly, looking at the major curriculum, like I thought psychology was going to be easier, and I wanted to party, and and I did. So
any students watching, would you advise them to take that path?
It's legitimate, but I had some serious brushing up to do, later on, because I did Brooklyn College. I have to give them a lot of credit for their core curriculum. They require that everybody, or they did at the time, they require that everybody takes biology, chemistry, physics, and geology.
Wow.
So I took those things, but I just took them for, the non-major. And when it came time that I was, seriously looking at grad school, it was clear that I needed that cell and molecular background that I didn't get as an undergraduate. And so I ended up not doing it formally until I got to grad school. In my first year of graduate school, taking a cell and molecular neuroscience class, realizing that I was really in trouble, which was, that's a hard experience, right? When the first time you're in a really challenging situation, especially if you've gotten to that point where you've gotten into grad school, you've probably been a good student, right? And done well. And when you're like, oh, this is not going well.
Yeah.
So I really needed to kind of buckle down and study and get, that extra help and learn all that stuff that other people had done in college. But it worked out.
But that's one of those, not everyone that does psychology PhD gets that foundation, right? You went towards the biology end of it, the physiology, so.
Yeah, a lot of people in psych wouldn't have taken that kind of stuff. So it's definitely one of many paths in psych.
And so in terms of your divergence going to academia versus other, what was that choice and why did that happen?
So I think for me, it was a really kind of an environment thing. In college, even for a while in college, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. But I knew physiological psychology generally. I knew I was interested in research. I chose a laboratory. I was in a like honors program where you're supposed to do, independent study or like DIS here. And I chose the lab that I would join, really based on the person. Partly based on the research. I thought the kind of work that he did was really interesting. He studied feeding, actually, and he studied learning and feeding and the physiology of kind of how we learn food preferences, how you, for example, come to associate taste with the, we call it post-ingestive effects, so kind of like the good stuff that happens in your guts after you eat, how you come to associate that and then start to prefer that taste in the future. So he was doing that kind of work, which I thought was interesting, but I also thought other people were doing interesting stuff. But at the time, my mother was actually the secretary in the Department of Psychology. So she was an administrative assistant, and that was the job she had. And so she knew these professors, and she told me that this person, Tony Sclafani, was a really nice, normal person.
Which is valuable insight. I will tell all of you.
It's a real thing.
Yeah. We only hope our staff says the same about us. Yeah. maybe not. That's awesome.
Yeah. What she really meant was Tony had himself also been a first generation student and was a very just like down to earth guy, like with a Brooklyn accent. And, where some of the other faculty members were people who came from like many generations of PhDs and a lot of money and just like lived in a little bit of a different world. And I think, she had a sense that Tony was just like a guy like us. So that was a big part of it. And it just very luckily, also he's an outstanding scientist. So that worked out really well. So his laboratory was just such a fun environment for me. And it was not just that the research was cool. It was also that being around all practicing scientists, right? And chatting about science, collecting new data, of course, is fun. But it was that kind of social and cultural situation of the lab that I really loved. To give that up.
that's hard mode. It turns on every time you grab it.
Yes. So you've got to get it away from him or grab it when he's not looking.
Anyway, so you enjoyed the lab environment, and that's really what convinced you wanted to do that path. Yeah,
one of the grad students who was there at the time is still a friend.
That's awesome.
And I still am in contact with the faculty members there. They were really wonderful mentors, wonderful group of people. So that definitely was, and experiencing, collecting data that I could present at internal kind of things like FSU has undergrad research day. We had that at Brooklyn College. And so presenting a poster, giving a talk and kind of just experiencing all that was really exciting. And I will say at the time, I really didn't understand that there was another career path if you wanted to be a scientist. I really just thought that I like this, I guess I'm going to be a professor too. And so that was really my only goal at that point. But yeah, it was, now of course I realize that there are many other choices, many other excellent choices. So yeah, it was very lucky in a lot of ways that I was in that lab, working with those people. And then when it came time for grad school, I was interested in continuing on that topic on feeding behavior and brain basis of feeding. And that kind of connected me with my graduate mentors. So.
And I was on to academia from there. That's fun. All right. One question we didn't get to, but speaking of neuroscience of ingestion, what are we drinking tonight?
I have Proof La La Land.
So
A
anyone's
local
not-
brewery.
Yeah, Proof is Tallahassee based, actually. They have a major production. I mean, that's in the time we've been here, they have exploded actually, and they're spreading out
Yeah.
regionally. And so, yeah, if anyone's interested, Proof La La Land Indian Pale Ale, pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gave me the task of finding a local IPA, and it was this or Ology, I guess, is the other big one.
Yeah, and Deep is another one.
Oh, yeah,
here.
Deep. I
Yeah,
forgot
we have,
about
we
that.
have several excellent breweries.
Yeah. All right, so if anyone has questions for Diana, she's happy to answer them, talking about the neuroscience of eating disorders, metabolic issues, things like that. Scuzzbot has one. Scuzzbot, welcome back to the stream. Does your upbringing / childhood have an effect on your relationship with food?
Yeah, so we know a fair amount about that. There's some really interesting work on actually even in utero exposure. So preferences, food preferences are influenced by what you are exposed to even in the womb. And oops,
Oh,
you got the
no.
hat back.
Oh, I don't
dropped
think you
it.
can reach it. You got it.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yes,
Yes.
got it.
Take that, old man.
Excellent.
What did we learn?
It's gone, pal. He's gonna have to go get his sun hat now.
Oh, is that what you're getting
That's
him out
the
of there?
goal. Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
he
poor
needs
guy's got to go
to-
swimming.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, the
So-
detour. Anyway, your childhood.
So yeah,
In utero
so even
studies.
in utero exposure to different, and what we think that has to do with is, of course, anything that's circulating in the blood, right, of mom is going to end up getting through the placenta and being detected perhaps by the fetus. So there's some evidence for that kind of thing. And then there's also evidence, lots and lots of evidence that familiarity is just a big part of eating behavior. So if you are growing up with certain kinds of foods as like kind of your typical family food, you may not like everything your family makes, but you're going to have a certain kind of comfort level with that type of stuff. So this is what people later in life will consider a comfort food, that varies culturally a lot. And that's partly why. And then learned preferences. So your experiences, the more often you consume something in a positive context, the more likely you are to, develop a positive vibes about that. And the other thing that we develop is taste aversions. And so these are conditioned taste aversions, what's called. And that is when you consume a food and you get sick sometime after that. And it can be a half hour later, it can be even as much as a day later. And we will often form these really powerful associations with that, between the taste of that food or the flavor of that food and having been sick. Specifically, upper GI type illness is what does this. And that is, we think, a kind of an evolutionary mechanism to avoid toxic stuff in the future. So, you should not eat something that's poison. Most of the time, though, the food isn't what really got us sick. And so these are really commonly developed in kids. If you eat something and then have a stomach virus, you may develop one of these aversions. Super common if you go the state fair and you eat some deep fried Oreos and then you go on the upside down roller coaster. And then now deep fried Oreos are a problem in the future. So that's definitely something that happens.
Is a pizza. Thank you for the follow. Thank you for joining us. If you have questions for Diana, put them in chat. We're going to be happy to answer those. So one of the questions I ask, particularly my psychology guests, several of those, as well as, even Karen McGinnis a couple weeks ago talking about plant biology and things like that. Nature versus nurture. If I forced you to put a number on, our eating behavior, what would be your percent nature versus nurture? And it's probably case by case, but generally.
So there are estimates of for body weight specifically, and even for body fat mass and fat distribution, that that is in the area of different studies will mark it at different amounts, anywhere from 50 to 70% heritable. Okay. So that's a very big genetic influence, and we know there's a lot of genes that contribute, but I think you really have to always think about this in terms of interactions, right? Because we don't exist in a vacuum, right? Or your genes don't exist in a vacuum. So the way that something's going to affect your feeding behavior or your eating behavior is going to depend a lot on your context of what's available to you, of what your resources are, that kind of thing. And that's going to vary a lot, right? Depending on, those environmental influences, your family, your background, all that. Where is this guy? Oh, there he is. He went to fetch my pumpkin.
So if I had to force a number on non-extreme, middle of the Gaussian human behavior, are you willing to go out on a limb and say a number?
A number for
the nature versus nurture?
I don't know. I like to say that there's no such thing as nature versus nurture. Like it's just not a real dichotomy, right? Because they interact with each other so much. But I know a lot of behavioral genetics people will say all behavior is like 30-ish%. Like every behavior you look at is something like that. What. So yeah, maybe that's correct.
Maybe that's reasonable. All right. Yeah. Scuzzbot has many questions, but one of them is what causes picky eating?
That's a good question. We don't really know. So we do know that picky eating is genetic. It is highly heritable. So for folks who have a child who's picky, it's not your fault. Or if you are a picky eater and you feel like people are always telling you like, why won't you just try new things? But you just really, really don't want to. Like there is a biology there. That's part of it.
Well, I mean, so there's presumably several tiers to that, right? Because there's certain people that don't have certain taste receptors, right? I don't remember what it's like.
Right, yeah.
Bitterness or something. There's like they can't taste.
Right. So super tasters would be people who have very high sensitivity to all kinds of bitter, in particular, but all kinds of foods. Bitter is kind of the one that we test because we have some compounds that are bitter if you can taste it, but are not bitter at all if you can't. So if you're a super taster, you have a higher density of taste receptors, of all kinds of taste receptors. And there's a variant of the bitter taste receptor in particular that's more, and another one that's less sensitive. So those are big determinants that would not necessarily create pickiness, but it would definitely influences preferences. So that would be someone who's a super taster does not want to drink an IPA, for example.
So I mean, those super tasters, going back to the nature versus nurture, I mean, those the number of receptors, that's a predetermined thing. I mean, that's a genetically dictated outcome.
Yeah. So density of receptors is strongly genetically influenced, but also there are environmental things that could impact this. So cigarette smoking, for example, which hopefully nobody listening is a heavy cigarette smoker. And that has the rates of cigarette smoking have gone way down over the years. So there's maybe less of that.
So that would destroy receptors, but not increase the number.
Right, exactly. Okay. I don't know that there's any mechanism by which you could possibly increase your number.
I mean, so is that so if you're going to go professional in like wine tasting and sommelier and things like that, I mean, are these people, does it select for people that have that super tasting, have those maybe no one studied?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if folks who do like that kind of level of wine stuff are more likely to be super tasters. Super tasters tend to have more I guess I would, as a non-super taster, I would describe it as bland taste in food. They tend to be people who
they don't want it,
don't want anything too much. And so I'm not sure if they would be people who would even enjoy. They tend not to like alcohol, in fact.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I'm trying to get the gardener to go hammer so that I can scare him into hammering his own hand. But he has to go hammer. So super tasting is definitely, there are apparently, so a lot of people who are super tasters are, in that more kind of like prefer blander, less spicy, less alcohol, less bitter. But then there is a group of people, I'm told by one of the folks who has done most of the work on this, Linda Bartoshuk, who was a professor at UF, there is kind of a subset of super tasters who are like just really lean into it and are into experience and tasting everything and kind of enjoying their super tasting.
Yeah.
So maybe they are the people who would be really into that kind of thing.
I mean, it's one of those things I think about, in terms of I was an athlete, right? And there's certain genetic predispositions that say if you're over 5'7", you are not going to be an Olympic gymnast. Like that is just the physics dictates that. But I mean, anyone that's going to be at the top tier of performance in any, dexterous or physical skill, presumably there's a genetic component. It's always fascinated me. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's where, that interaction, right, between genes and environment can come in. And in that context, like, who are you around? You might be, as a shorter person or a person with, a certain kind of muscle fibers, you might be still the best, depending on who's around, who you're competing with.
Good
right?
point. Good point. Scuzzbot. So I don't eat my vegetables because my grandma didn't eat hers. Woot, it's not my fault.
Yeah, exposure does definitely play a role. And, I guess the other thing I would say is that, and one of the reasons why I think sort of this biology versus environment thing is hard, is for me as a neuroscientist, all of your behavior is biological. There is no behavior that is not biological, right? Because it all comes from your brain. So at some level, there's no distinction.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I think that's generally a good answer to it, because it is, distinguishing it is hard unless you can, completely isolate someone in a white box for the entirety of their existence. You can't really distinguish environment, right?
This is what I have to do. Now the sign is down. I'll come hammer it.
And then hammer's hand.
Did not know I could pull down the sign.
I like it.
Learning new things here.
That's what we're about on Ask a Scientist Gaming. We're a half hour in. We better do a prediction. Which one do you want to do? What are you excited about?
Let's see. We can talk about eating disorders. Start
this
with
one?
the top one, yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do a prediction. For those of you not familiar, predictions on Twitch are typically making decisions about outcomes in games. Like, will Diana beat this level in a certain amount of time? But on Ask a Scientist Gaming, we do it a little bit differently. Instead of a video game-related prediction, we do science-based questions. So I ask my guests to come up with science questions related to their expertise, and we're going to give you guys 2 minutes to answer. You get to use your standard internet units. If you're not following us, click the follow button. You'll get 300 standard internet units to bet on these questions. And the idea is, depending on your degree of confidence, you can bet as many standard internet units as you want on one of the two answers that we're going to pop up on the screen. So we're going to pop up a question right now. The question is about changes in college students' eating disorder risk, as in the risk of them having an eating disorder. Did it increase from 2013 to 2023, or did it decrease from 2013 to 2023? And so those of you that haven't done this before, on the top of your chat, you'll see a predict button. You can click the predict button and you can pick one of those two answers depending on your degree of confidence. Note you are on an Ask a Scientist Gaming honor policy. You cannot Google this, chat GPT it. This is a non-trivial one to search, though. I imagine this is not an easy Google, but throw your predictions in there now. Make your best guess or know the answer. Whatever you guys want to do, throw them in there now. Is there anything you want to add to this question?
No, I think that's, I guess we'll say, including all different kinds of eating disorders in that.
Oh, that's a good qualifier, because that's a broad area. So that's everything from anorexia to bulimia to binge eating to everything. That will be a curious list to dive into, actually, after this question. But yeah, make your predictions now. Did it increase or decrease from 2013 to 2023? This is an interesting one, because I imagine there are cultural ebbs and flows that impact how people interact with food. Because like the 90s, early 2000s, I imagine, was a very destructive time, especially for teenage girls. So
yeah, I don't know that there's been any time in my life when we haven't had a somewhat harmful media culture around for people's body image.
Yeah.
And definitely, we focus so much and rightly so in many ways on girls and women in particular. But, boys and men are not excluded from this. And it may be less obvious sometimes, but there are, cultural body ideals that absolutely influence boys and men, and boys and men are also vulnerable.
that makes sense. All right. So everyone said it increased from 2013 to 2013 to 2023. Diana, what's the answer?
That is correct.
Everyone got it right. Congratulations. You guys made no imaginary internet points, but you have the pride of getting that answer correct. Presumably they knew. They were very confident in that.
All right.
So is there any... Oof, that got loud. That's the fight.
The drama of fighting the shopkeeper. Yes.
So it increased.
Yeah,
How much? I think you had numbers in here.
Yes, it increased in the area of 85 to 90%, depending on the estimate, and that's risk. So that this is measured by questionnaires that ask about kind of disordered eating practices, and so that does not mean a diagnosis. That's not necessarily that people are 90% more likely to get diagnosed with an eating disorder, but that there is this risk because if you've got a lot of kind of signs of disordered eating and kind of that more unhealthy relationship with food, thinking about restricting all the time, that kind of stuff, then there's a higher risk for that person. Eating disorder rates overall, they vary a lot depending on the specific disorder. Anorexia nervosa is the least common, but in some ways most severe, and binge eating disorder is the most common. Not severe, but more common. And so those rates also, there's a range. For women, it's estimated in the area of 10 to 20%. This is college age people in particular, and for men between 4 and 10%. And the range is because no one study can capture the whole population. So these different studies that sample different students, different people at different universities, different parts of the country, different countries. Yeah.
So Reese's Pieces had a follow-up on that. I was guessing COVID was a non-trivial contributor.
Yeah, so a lot of that is thought to be COVID related, and even studies where they did actually have data from shortly before COVID versus 2020, 2021, that's where the jump really seemed to happen. And for a lot of people being, especially in lockdown, during that period of time was especially triggering for eating disorders.
Man, that is intense. And this is U.S. students, or this is any college age?
There's data for the U.S. and there's also data for France and for some other parts of Europe. And it's a common thing across the board.
Interesting, because Scuzzbot had I don't know if it's an independent question or a related one, but are eating disorders equally common all over the world, or do some countries have higher rates than others?
There are some differences, but they are found everywhere, and the differences are fairly small. And I think within the range of I don't know if we can say for sure that there's a real difference or if it's a difference in kind of measuring and because if you sample students in one part of the US versus another part of the US in a different study, you might find different numbers there too. So that I'm not positive that there's a big difference there. There are obviously cultural differences around the world in kind of the way people think about eating and body image and stuff like that you could imagine could contribute, but I'm not sure about that.
Well, then availability of food presumably is a non-trivial. I mean, that's both developmentally and,
yes.
Sorry, I'm going to catch up on a few of these. Why do some people view food as just a means of putting energy in their body and others have a lot of emotional attachment to eating?
That's a great question. There is that huge individual difference, right? And there are some interesting kinds of surveys that ask things like, if you, do you often just kind of stop eating, or you're you don't have to finish a meal, you could just walk away from food, you don't think about it that much, that kind of thing. And for that, there's a huge range. There are people who really, if they didn't have to eat, they wouldn't, right? It's like a bother to them, right? To have to spend the time doing that. And there are other people who, really enjoy food and love it. And there's people for whom food is like a comfort, right? There's it's not a technical term exactly, comfort food, but it's an experience that people have. And there is actually evidence that food, particularly higher fat and higher sugar food, it can reduce some of the physiological responses to stress.
Oh, interesting.
So the data
So
on that,
self-medicating via food.
yeah, and particularly in humans and in rodents too. The data that really support that are from studies where the individual is experiencing chronic and especially unpredictable stress. And so this would be the kind of stress that's, not like you just almost get into a car accident and that was terrifying and now you want to eat a brownie. It's not like that. Usually if something like that happens, very acute, very significant stress, that has an appetite suppressing effect. Typically that's something where most people, regardless of your relationship with food in general, are probably not going to run and eat a lot. But it's the more chronic, more longer term, repeated, and then especially like uncontrollable kinds of stress. So for example, like a neurosurgeon has a high stress job with people's lives in their hands, but also like that's a very highly paid professional who probably has a lot of agency in when they work and where they work, and lots of things about their life are in their control. But somebody who's like maybe a cashier at Walmart and perhaps a single mom and doesn't always work the same shift, doesn't have control over what shift she works, might lose her job if she has to call out sick. Like that's a very different kind of stress. And it's that kind of stress that seems to be particularly the kind where you'll get overeating of the higher fat, high sugar foods, and also even independent of eating behavior, there's some evidence to suggest it's independent of eating behavior, increased risk for metabolic disease.
Increased risk as it manifests because of that behavior or a predisposition towards...
So it seems like, of course, with humans, we can't, randomly assign people to a high stress life or a low stress life. But from rodent studies, it seems like it is actually that repeated experience of chronic stress that causes that elevates that risk, independent of any other behavior or genetic risk that someone might have. So yeah, reasons to try to lower your stress. Right?
Yeah. Just do it. Just lower your stress.
Yeah. So easy.
It's like our job. It's finals week is in 2 weeks. God. With that said, that idea of flexibility in your schedule and permanency of your job and low risk of really losing life, we complain, but we're pretty comfortable in our
very much. Yeah.
It's an interesting lifestyle, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. All right. Related to similar to the discussion, Scotsbot wants to know, how do eating disorders compare to addiction issues?
So there's definitely some discussion about that kind of thing out there in the literature and in the popular press. You'll hear people talk about food addiction. That is a little controversial, whether food addiction is even a real thing. There's some big differences between even, what I would call, maybe to be a little more conservative, compulsive eating. And the things that are similar about it are the compulsive aspect, right? But we don't, you need to eat, you have to eat, you can't just not eat. Right? So that's very different. And some of the other aspects that we think about for substance use disorders just don't really exist for eating. So an eating disorder, the one that probably is most often considered to be similar to substance use disorders would be binge eating, or the binge behavior in bulimia nervosa, where there's binging and then some kind of purging. There is that compulsive overeating part of it, but there's also, the body image stuff that's a big part of the diagnosis. That's not something that has any, kind of mirror in substance use disorder. And we have some evidence now from big genome-wide association studies that the genes that, at least some of the genes that contribute to risk for some of these eating disorders have to do with metabolism and energy balance and kind of energy homeostasis. So it seems different from what might be involved in, say, methamphetamine addiction. But, certainly there are elements there, like the compulsive aspect, and feeling unable to stop or unable to control yourself, unable to stop even though you want to, those kinds of things that have similarities. And there's a lot of, tasty food is that activates brain reward circuitry that is the same brain reward circuitry that is activated by drugs of abuse.
I was going to ask, I mean, so is that like it's triggering endorphins and that like people are feeding off of that? Is that's measured, that's well known?
Yeah, so there are definitely similarities there. There's a circuit in the brain called the mesolimbic dopamine pathway. So these are dopamine neurons. Everybody's probably heard of dopamine as like the pleasure chemical, which is a little bit of an oversimplification, but dopamine right. But dopamine neurons in this area called the ventral tegmental area really are very, very important for that experience of reward and especially like learning about goals. And so drugs of abuse, food that we like, water if you're thirsty, socializing, playing video games, in fact, and lots of other things. Basically, like anything that we like can activate.
We are checking many of those boxes tonight. Cheers, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, absolutely. That activates those pathways. So there's absolutely overlap in these things, and so it's still an open question. Like if somebody had some kind of maybe dysfunction in that pathway, why might that lead to drug addiction versus binge eating disorder versus shopping addiction versus gambling addiction? It's not just all the same, even though there is this common pathway. So we have a lot to learn still.
I mean, so related to that, there's been like, I don't know about emerging, but there's developing use of like psychedelics and mushrooms and stuff to treat like PTSD and addiction and things like that. Is that being targeted for eating disorders as well? Does that help reset brain circuitry?
That's an interesting question. I actually don't know if anybody's looking at that for eating disorders specifically. One of the things about eating disorders is that they're very often comorbid, meaning they co-occur with depression and anxiety.
I see.
So not 100% of the time, but often. So somebody who has one of those things and is in a study, for example, for psychedelic treatment of depression. It could be that we'll find out, from things like that maybe there is some ability to treat eating disorders too. Some of the data on that is super exciting for not only things like depression, but substance use disorder. There was a study, I wish I could remember the name of the group that did it now, but it was, I think, looking at alcohol specifically. And substance use disorders are pretty tricky. Their treatments are not great. We don't have good medical treatments for these things.
Yeah.
People really are kind of stuck for the most part with behavioral kinds of interventions and 12-step programs and therapy and things like that. And there's no one works better than another. But the psychedelic treatment basically had an incredible success rate.
That's awesome.
So that's very exciting.
Promising, yeah. No, it's take-home message from Ask a Scientist Gaming: do drugs. It's great for you.
I mean, not all drugs are the same.
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly.
And the psychedelics is interesting. We actually just recently in the psych department had some visitors talking about this. It's probably not so simple as just, you have a problem and you go get some shrooms and, there you go. These studies where there's all this success, they are really showing that success after really kind of carefully regimented sort of treatment protocol. So there's a guide, there's a therapist with you, like working with you the whole time. Nobody's ever like left alone to just trip by themselves in their basement or something.
I was going to say, they're not going to have a bad trip, right? They're like, this is mediated and...
Right. Yeah. It's you have to actually like kind of work through some things, in the process. Yeah. So it's definitely it's probably not just simply a pharmacologic effect. I don't know that we're ever going to have just like a psychedelic pill that cures everything. It's probably not that. Fixed. Yeah.
Just for 12 hours, you'll be fine.
Right. It's probably going to be, actually having some kind of, that therapeutic experience is going to really matter.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's catch up on a few things. Speaking of which, Scuzzbot has redeemed Take a Drink. So cheers, Diana. How's the game going thus far?
All right, definitely moving slowly, but
you're making progress though.
All right, she's
presumably
coming.
You need to trap her.
I have to trap her in here, and there we go. done. I've trapped myself as well, but that's okay because she's going to open a door.
Achievement unlocked. Awesome.
Yes.
All right, let's catch up on a few. We should do a prediction sometime soon. I want to get through a bunch of those because they're really fun questions. But Panda Paul, welcome to the stream. Thank you for joining us. You should click the follow button. You'll get notifications about future streams, and it also helps with our visibility. But their question is, have eating disorders been observed in any species other than humans under natural conditions, not something we've induced or genetically triggered?
That is a great question. The answer is probably not exactly. So animals really will not ever starve themselves for no reason at all. That's something that, we have ways in the laboratory of modeling eating disorders. But you have to do some special stuff to make it happen. Binge eating might be the closest. So in the animal model for binge eating, what you do is give animals access to very tasty, kind of special food, only once in a while. And so if you imagine, in your life, you get to eat exclusively kind of, very healthy oatmeal. That's it, all day, every day, except once in a while we give you cake. Right? Like unpredictably, every so often you get cake. It might really get you very excited when you get cake. And then in that case, you may, when you do get access to that cake, since you don't know when you might have access to it again, you may eat a very large amount of cake, right? And so you can do that in animals and get that type of, I would not call it binge eating disorder. But it's a way of getting animals to consume really large amounts of food in a really short amount of time, which is one feature of binge eating. But the other, aspects of eating disorders that are really important in diagnosing them are the preoccupation with weight and shape and, that kind of intention part. And that doesn't exist in animals, right? So it's something I do work with rodents modeling eating disorders, but we're really careful to note that, when you do that, there may be something we can learn about the physiology that relates to that specific feature, but we're not looking at a actual eating disorder in all of its, various aspects. Like that is a human thing.
Yeah, no, that's intriguing. Like mice and rats don't watch Baywatch growing up, right? They don't have that type of influence. They don't have the magazine rack necessarily. Right. That's, that to some degree gets to the nature versus, well, if you want to partition it that way, right? Like how much your social environment matters. But yeah, Panda Paul, thank you for the follow. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully that answered your question. Scuzzbot has one. Can eating disorders be cured, or do sufferers have to deal with them forever?
No, so they actually can be treated. Many people go into complete remission and live the rest of their lives without an eating disorder. It even does happen sometimes that people will go into remission on their own without like additional treatment, therapy, etc. Although that's going to be the best thing for most people. They're gonna need some treatment and some help. For anorexia nervosa especially, particularly if it's severe, that's somebody who's going to really need like nutritional support recovering. And for anorexia, getting their weight back up in particular, for people who have anorexia nervosa, one of the features is going to be, very severe food restriction and weight loss. And getting people back to a healthy weight is a really important part of recovery. But people who have this don't want to eat and they don't want to get back to a healthier weight. So support is really needed for that. But lots of people do. People do relapse also. But they absolutely can recover.
I mean, so that's interesting. And maybe you might not know these statistics, but in terms of like recovery rate and recidivism and stuff like, what's the percent? I know alcoholism, it's relatively high, right? I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but how does that compare? What would, if you had to guess?
I think it's better success than that, but I actually don't know the exact numbers or a recent estimate, so I don't want to give you misleading values.
I mean, but that goes back to that, like, especially alcoholism, because I think it's been demonstrated many times that, like, Alcoholics Anonymous is not a particularly effective way to do this, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, or no better than much else.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost
or
nothing
cold
at all.
turkey on your own. Yeah. And it's, man, it's tragic that we don't have a better strategy on that. But related to that is, Scuzzbot wants to know, what are your thoughts on weight loss drugs?
So until recently, weight loss drugs we only had a few options, and none of them were great. In terms of, and I guess I should qualify that, first of all, diet and exercise as a weight loss method for people who want to lose weight, can be successful to some extent, but is not long-term typically successful. So whatever amount of weight people lose, that is something that, and restricting your food intake in that situation is a pretty important part of it. So exercise alone, unless it's very, very extreme, really doesn't induce weight loss. Exercise, I do have to say, on a little tangential note, is super healthy for you. So if you can exercise, you should. There are many, many good reasons to exercise that have nothing to do with weight loss. But if you're just thinking about weight loss alone, the diet part is important. But there's only so much weight that people lose that they won't just gain back. There's lots and lots of studies going back decades showing that people will regain almost all or even more than the weight that they lost most of it within a year of the original weight loss, and almost all of it within 5 years. So long term, that's not super successful, and that's one of the reasons why these drugs are developed. So some of the drugs that are out there, there are a couple that are serotonin based. That kind of came out of the development of antidepressants. They're really similar to antidepressant drugs that boost serotonin at synapses. They have a somewhat appetite suppressing effect, but the effectiveness of those drugs versus nothing at all is a very, very minimal effect. So you're taking a drug that may have a lot of side effects and not give you very much weight loss, as a result. The other drug that was out there for a long time, still out there, it's available at the supermarket if you want it, are drugs that inhibit fat absorption from the gut. So that works totally differently. That's not affecting your appetite. What it's doing is basically making you shit yourself if you eat a lot of fat. It's going to give you serious gastrointestinal distress. It's going to prevent absorption of fat, so it's going to leave that fat in your gut instead, in your intestine instead, and it's going to have to come out somehow, right? So bad effects. So really what happens when people take those drugs is that they learn real quick to eat a very low-fat diet.
I see.
And that causes calorie restriction, even though it's not actually suppressing their appetite. So that was all we had for a really long time. And then pretty recently, in the past several years, we've got these other drugs that I'm sure everybody's heard of. They're pretty popular, or in the popular press, covered often. Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, right? They're GLP-1 based drugs, so it's glucagon-like peptide 1. And that is actually a hormone and neurotransmitter that I've studied extensively in my career. So these drugs are really tapping into the physiology that controls appetite and controls eating in a way that the previous drugs weren't doing.
Yeah.
And they are, in a way, it was just sort of the good luck of finding a drug that stimulates those receptors much, much more powerfully than the hormone itself. So when someone takes one of these drugs, it is like reproducing the response that your gut has to a big meal, only like 10 times greater.
Wow. So this is like attacking the cause rather than the symptoms. This is like
kind of. It's not the case that a person who has overweight or obesity doesn't have these gut hormones or doesn't have these gut responses to food. But it is the case that in some experiments anyway, in some studies, they may have a somewhat lesser response.
I see.
There's some data to suggest that that's the case. These drugs, though, are taking it to a whole other level. They're not just, or they're not like restoring an impaired response. They are really kind of hitting you over the head with a hammer. And one of the side effects is nausea for a lot of people.
Oh, interesting.
And that's definitely tricky to manage. It's one of the reasons why some people don't stay on these drugs. It's one of the the things about these drugs. They were originally approved for people with diabetes because they also have really pretty effective ability for type 2 diabetes specifically to increase insulin release. So there's two different kinds of diabetes for folks who don't know. One is called type 1, and that's where the pancreas, the cells that produce insulin, they start to die. And so the person's body cannot make this hormone insulin that's super important for getting glucose, sugar in your blood put away, right? Type 2 diabetes is different. Type 2 diabetes, at least at first, people start out, their pancreas is intact, they can make insulin. It's that the cells of their body are not responding to that insulin very well. And so one of the ways that we can help treat that is to get the person to produce more insulin. And so these drugs do that. So for somebody who has type 2 diabetes, these drugs were pretty amazing because they promote, the body's own insulin release very effectively. And also they have this appetite suppressing effect. They also affect gastric emptying, so movement of food through the gut, slow it down. So you get glucose and other nutrients get into your intestine and into your system a little bit more slowly, which is easier to handle. So a lot of kind of beneficial effects there. And the difference between those and other drugs from the past that have been used for treatment of type 2 diabetes are that a lot of those other drugs actually cause weight gain, and some of them cause weight gain even independent of appetite. So that's tricky because a lot of folks with type 2 diabetes have overweight or obesity. That is one of the things that can increase risk for that. And so their doctor is going to be telling them, like, you should lose weight, but I'm also going to give you a drug that causes weight gain. Yeah. And so this is really was unique, right? In that you now have a drug that could kind of help on both fronts. So people with type 2 diabetes especially, you might imagine, would be more willing to tolerate, a little bit of nausea at the beginning to kind of ramp up and get there with those drugs than somebody who doesn't have something like that or has other options. So that's kind of how they evolve. So I think these drugs are exciting. They're pretty safe. They're very effective in a lot of ways. But also, we probably don't need everybody to take them. So they've gotten very popular, and there's a shortage, or at least sometimes there's a shortage. There's been a shortage at times. I think I wouldn't like to see a world where everybody's constantly taking appetite suppressing drugs and everybody has to be thin. I think we don't all have to be looking to do this. But I think overall very positive.
Oh, that's good. So it's more promising now. Anything historically has not been successful, but man, how far, if you had to guess, how far away are we from a pill?
So they have actually oral, he caught me. They have oral versions of these. So far, right, these have all been injectable, and that's because they're peptides. Yep. So peptides, if you eat it, it just gets digested in your stomach and it's gone. But there is actually an oral version now that's out there that's been tested just in clinical trials and looks very effective. Wow. Looks very promising. That'll be a big improvement. Right now, the drugs, the injectable drugs, are pretty long lasting. It's a once weekly. That's not as bad as once a day. Diabetes, yeah. But and that's again another thing where if you have diabetes and you were injecting insulin frequently, that's a multiple time a day thing. And so going to a once a week thing is an improvement. But if you weren't in a situation where you had to inject yourself ever, then this is not an improvement.
All right, so transitioning a little bit, Kylie, welcome back to the stream. Their question is, have you eaten uni? Are you familiar with this? I had to look it up. It's the fleshy meat of sea urchin.
I have, yes. I have.
Follow up on
like
that.
Sushi.
What is your opinion on sushi? both personally and professionally.
I have no professional opinion at all about this.
You haven't fed rat sushi yet?
I have not fed rat sushi. I do like it myself. I will say for me there's like actually an academic connection because growing up as I did in a working class sometimes poor household, there was no sushi. That was not something I was ever exposed to as a kid. And the first time I ever had sushi was in graduate school. It was something that I think a lot of first generation folks experience, that it is in college or grad school when you find yourself in a situation where like everybody around you seems to know what's going on, but you don't.
Yeah. No, I feel that.
Sushi for the first time was one of those experiences for me.
Yeah. Man, so going back to that, I mean, you're a first generation college student. Have you seen these studies, like in terms of professorship, 1 in 4 of our colleagues' parents were PhD and or professors?
Yeah.
Like, you and I are both anomalies in that respect, because like I grew up poor, middle of nowhere, Minnesota, and then somehow ended up a professor. But I mean, that's incredible. I mean, kudos on, I wouldn't say climbing out of it, but like, it's not a normal occurrence, right?
Yeah. And you know, when I saw that, I don't remember when that study, maybe a year ago, came out, that really like mapped pathways and stuff. It was so, putting the numbers like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
The economics, the parental achievement levels.
Also not shocking necessarily in terms of, you know, thinking back just on my anecdotal experience. I know, you know, when I got to graduate school, I was the only person in my class who had gone to a public college.
Wow.
It was very normal that, certainly not everybody was like rich kids, but quite a few of those, my fellow grad students, had apartments that were getting paid for by parents or assisted, you know, by parents. So they weren't just living on their stipend, which I was. So very different kind of lifestyle for me versus them. And so I kind of knew that a lot of people had, you know, that background. But yeah, the numbers, it was really kind of surprising.
I mean, so follow up on that, and I've advocated for this a little bit in our department. Has this affected your hiring? I mean, there's a lot of bias towards top 10 institutions, and like, are they the best people, or are they the best ones on paper because they're legacy? Like, I've advocated more than once for like dark horse hires, where you like bring in somebody for an interview that's not the legacy, not the polished, but maybe the diamond in the rough.
Yeah, I think, I don't know that we've really talked about that very explicitly in my department, but I will say we have quite a few people in my department, professors who are themselves first-gen students. And I think at FSU in general, actually, this is common. I wonder if it's, because I know for me and for some of my colleagues, definitely a part of it is that our own experience made us want to work at a public institution.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I wonder if there's a little bit of that, but it seems even just kind of especially to be the case at FSU, more so than some places. So I think just having the numbers of us who have that background might influence that a little bit. We certainly, and we've experienced this even recently, I won't get specific so I don't offend anybody, but we have had times when there's been the person who is kind of has the pedigree and has been at all the top places and has worked with the Nobel Prize winners and has, you know, all of that, and just like did not have the right vibes, you know, in person. Like they didn't seem like they were going to be able to work with our students. They didn't seem like, they just kind of seemed like they had some cluelessness relating to this. And we did not hire that person, you know? So that's happened many times over the years. I've always felt, about my department anyway, psychology, that there is really a value on the culture and the atmosphere and on, you know, finding people who are going to work well with our students, and that we wouldn't hire necessarily the person who has, you know, all the top publications if they didn't also have those things. So, which is not true at every department. So I think that's a really good thing here.
That's awesome. I mean, especially like you have a certain cross section of students and you have to be able to work with them. And if you can't, you will not be successful no matter how brilliant you are. So I respect that. That's something, I mean, not something we've explicitly discussed, but it's definitely a conversational item. All right, we should do another prediction. Which one do you want to do next? Which one do you want to talk about?
Let's see. How about the adipose tissue one? That's fun.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not following, click the follow button, get your 300 standard internet units. We're going to pop up a prediction right now. It's going to be a science question. You're going to have 2 minutes to answer. The question is, adipose tissue, that's fat, only stores energy, true or false? As in, does it only store energy, or does it have other things it does? M Can Opener, thank you for the follow. Thank you for joining us. Put your prediction in right now. Click that predict button. Spend your standard internet units as you feel appropriate. Adipose tissue / fat only stores energy, true or false? Is there anything you want to add to this question?
No, I think that's
pretty
good.
straightforward. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, so while we wait for that one, are you familiar with ribose 5-phosphate isomerase deficiency?
No, I am not.
That's something very specific. Kylie, I can look that up, but that one might be too specific. Is that related to some digestive disorder? I'll just do a quick Google search. But you guys have about a minute to put in your prediction right now. Adipose tissue is only used for storing energy, true or false? Enzymopathy of the pentose phosphate pathway. Wow. Symptoms include optic atrophy, nystagmus, cerebral ataxia, seizures, spasticity. Wow, this is a list. Global development delay. Presumably this is an infant-based thing. I'll look up the Wikipedia page. I learn things every stream. All right, if you guys have your predictions, you have about 10 seconds now. Adipose tissue only stores energy. Is that true or is that false? Get your predictions in now. Click the predict button. And it's closing. All right, Diana, what's the answer?
Answer is no. It does a bunch of other things.
And according to the amount of internet points bet on this, 99% agreed with you.
Very good. Very good.
The audience is on point on this. So what else does it do? What else does fat tissue do?
So there's two kinds of fat tissue. We have both brown and white adipose tissue. Most adults in Florida probably have very little brown because brown adipose tissue is for creating heat. And if you live in a really warm climate and you're a grown-up, you don't need a lot of help creating the heat. Your body does make heat, but obviously we're mammals, right? We have to maintain our body temperature, but we don't have to have this extra special organ or a lot of it to do it. Infants do need extra help because their bodies are very small, and so that core to surface area ratio means that they have to make more heat. So babies have more of it than we do, and people who live in like Arctic areas have more of it, and you can actually induce it by being in the cold a lot. That is something that can be done. This is actually something that people have tried to think about, like the benefits of cold exposure, that kind of stuff. One of the ideas is that it would be especially valuable to increase brown adipose tissue activity. So when it's active, it's making heat. So that is one thing that adipose tissue does. The other kind is white, and the white adipose tissue is the energy storage. But it's not only energy storage, right? It also releases a lot of different kinds of hormones. It does a lot of signaling. So one of the most kind of famous, well-known hormones that it releases is called leptin. And it's, we call it an adiposity signal. It's a hormone that your brain can detect, and it kind of tells your brain how much adipose tissue you have. So your brain wants to maintain some adipose tissue, right? Even if you wish you had less, which a lot of people do, the brain really wants to make sure that you've always got some, right? Because that's your emergency energy. If you lose enough adipose tissue, that's going to cause starvation, right? That's going to cause big problems. And so you need to be motivated to, kind of keep that adipose tissue, keep at least some energy stored. So if leptin goes down, which happens if you lose fat, leptin is a directly proportional to fat mass. So if you lose fat, white fat specifically, if you're fasting, if you're not eating as much as usual, leptin level goes down. Your body detects, your brain detects that leptin's gone down, and that produces a response to basically feel more hungry, to feel less satisfied by the amount of food that you might be, wanting to eat. And so if you're kind of listening to your body, you're going to then eat more, you're going to be more motivated to find food and get back that white adipose tissue that you lost. So the idea is that it's a kind of anti-starvation mechanism. And that's just one of those hormones, kind of signaling that fat does.
All right, so congratulations again. Anyone that said adipose tissue does more than store energy, you are correct, and enjoy your 1.01 to 1 payout. I don't know if you want to see the odds.
We have not fooled anyone so far.
Yeah, exactly. So it bases the odds based on the betting ratio, and that's their payout.
Yeah.
But if that would have been true, it would have been a 72 to 1 payout. So kudos to you, Scuzzbot, for the dark horse bet on that one. Unfortunately, it didn't pay out. Kylie, what are your thoughts on fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva? Are you familiar with this?
I do not have any thoughts about that.
So I know what this one is. This is it's where like ligament and muscle tissue turns to bone over time.
Oh, okay.
So
yes,
the
I have.
answer is it's horrible and nobody should have it ever. So I think that's an easy answer on that.
Yeah,
one.
but that is outside of my expertise, so I can't say any more.
I was going to say
it.
I'm not even sure there's a treatment for that, right? Because it's the body like growing bone tissue. It's like mechanistically built into the replacement process. Lori, welcome back to the stream. Really important question of the night. What are you guys drinking tonight? We are drinking Proof La La Land IPA. Diana wanted to go with a local IPA, so we went with Proof. There were a couple others we could do, but Proof was at Publix, so that was the easy choice. Exactly. So, Lori, thank you. Welcome back to the stream. Anyone just joining us, Ask Scientist Gaming, Mediocre Gameplay, Expert Science. Tonight, our guest is Dr. Diana Williams, who's a professor in the Department of Psychology and part of the Neurosciences program at Florida State University. She's an expert in the neuroscience of eating and things like, metabolic disorders and eating disorders, and particularly studying rats and how they process food, both what we might call casually nature and nurture, but also like genetic impact as well as environmental impact, and how that dictates how we interact and choose food, how much food we eat, things like that. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we are happy to answer them. Not necessarily about ossificans progressiva, but we'll do our best. Do you know alkaptonuria? Let me look that up. I wish I could pronounce these words. A black urine disease.
No.
It's a rare inherited disorder that prevents the body fully breaking down to protein building blocks, amino acids called tyrosine and phenylalanine. Cause a buildup of a chemical called homeogenestic acid in the body. Man, you're going with the detailed questions here, Kylie.
These are different kinds of metabolic disorders than I study.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's
I think they would be in that category of metabolic disorder for sure. But for me, when I use that term, I'm thinking about things like diabetes, thyroid disorder, things that affect whole body energy balance.
All right, so let's go with some of our canned questions, because there's one in particular I like to ask every single stream. I watched a lot of movies, and I'm always excited to hear about people's opinions in movies and their expertise is applied to those. So the question is, you've watched movies, TV shows where it's like something related to your expertise they got completely right or they got completely wrong. What were the movies and TV shows that, we'll start with, got it wrong?
Boy, when it comes to neuroscience, probably it's like everything. Partly. I think there's a lot that's like a little bit right. I can't think of any, or very few, I guess I'll say, very few neuroscientist characters in movies. there's often a kind of neuroscience element to a story, right?
Yeah.
Very common with artificial intelligence. I would definitely put in the neuroscience category. So I'm going to claim the Matrix series as actually about neuroscience.
Yeah, well, that's good.
But there's no like neuroscientist. I would say very often neuroscientists are, when they are depicted, so like, for example, I think there was a neuroscientist on Big Bang Theory. There was a neuroscientist on The Good Place, a couple TV shows, who they were human subjects, neuroimaging people. And I think there were some accurate things about the way that they were depicted, but also they were kind of shown as kind of studying like whatever struck their fancy that day, and and maybe like today I do human subjects fMRI work, and tomorrow I work with octopuses, and that's not normal for us. I won't say there's nobody like that, but that's not our typical way of working, certainly. But there are elements and like tons of science fiction that have, even though they are still science fiction fictionalized, there's elements of how it really is for us, and the kinds of questions that neuroscientists are asking. And I'm a big fan of science fiction, and especially the mad scientist genre is a favorite for me. So one of my favorite movies is an old one. It's called Altered States. It's from like 1980, Ken Russell movie.
Yep.
So it's definitely a mad scientist movie. The guy who is the mad scientist in there is a physiological psychologist. This is pre-neuroscience. So he's a physiological psychologist, and he's interested in sensory deprivation is kind of the method he's using, but he's trying to access what he, I think, talks about as like genetic memory, like memories that would be related to like previous iterations of our evolutionary history. And of course, in the movie, he does this and accomplishes this, which is totally nuts and not real, right? But this concept that there could be some sort of, memory passed down, through generations. We now study that in epigenetics, right? There is some evidence for kind of transgenerational memory being passed on in that way. Not quite like literal, I remember my great-great-grandmother as a child, right?
Yeah.
But that things that happen to someone in my long past might actually affect me biologically today in a way that affects my behavior.
Yeah.
And so like there are these little tidbits that you can find in all sorts of science fiction, no matter how ridiculous, that have some reality to them.
Yeah, so Scuzzbot has a couple. Have you seen the movie To the Bone? If so, how accurate is it?
I don't think I have seen that one, no.
Ellen is a 20-year-old dropout dealing with anorexia who returns home to a house after her stepmother, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read through the entirety of it, but apparently an anorexia-related... it's on Netflix. Netflix released the film. It was met with controversy, with some arguing that the film glamorized anorexia. That's not uncommon, I guess.
Yeah, not surprised.
The contrast on that is The Whale, the recent one with Brendan Fraser.
Right.
Which he's morbidly obese. I don't know what the cause of it is. I haven't seen The Whale yet. I probably should.
I haven't seen that either, and I decided not to, because although I like Brendan Fraser, everything I read about it suggested to me that I would be pissed off.
Really?
Yeah.
Like professionally, or like in terms of your expertise?
Yeah, probably. My understanding, I mean, again, I have to say, I did not watch the film, so.
Yeah. So
totally going on like other people talking about it.
So Scuzzbot says he's a binge eater, which is what caused him.
Okay, yeah. I think, so what I find, and what people were writing about that I think professionally would have annoyed me, was the depiction of eating disorders and obesity in particular as like being a sort of purely emotional thing, right? Because there is this biological element. There's a biological risk that someone might have to begin with. And so like there is behavior here and there's emotion involved, but it's also like you don't have an eating disorder because of something that happened in your past, right? Like it's a complex combination of these things. And so that kind of thing.
So Scuzzbot, interesting. As a binge eater, I could relate to some of his behaviors. So they
Yeah,
probably got
that doesn't
some of it
surprise
right.
me. Yeah, yeah. And there's, I mean, that's absolutely a component for sure, right?
So to the bone in the whale. You have no interest in seeing the whale.
Well, maybe I will. I'll
For next time you're on the stream,
Yeah.
we will quiz you on it. I guess the other one is Stephen King's Thinner. I don't know.
I have seen that. Yes.
Unrelated
Not
to eating
realistic,
disorder.
but
God, when Stephen King just gets to the heart of something that affects people. All right. Oh, interesting. Thirsty housewife, welcome to the stream. Thank you for joining us. Hello. I'm just wondering if you can explain how consuming cannabis leads to intense hunger. Asking for a friend of mine. Thirsty housewife, your anonymous ID is safe with us.
yeah. So cannabis, of course, contains cannabinoids, right? THC is one of the main cannabinoids that we know about, but there are actually lots of them. And these are chemicals that bind to cannabinoid receptors. And there's two kinds of cannabinoid receptors. There's the 1 and 2, we call them. They're creative names. So the cannabinoid 1 receptor in particular is expressed in the brain. A lot of other places too, but it's in the brain where we think this happens. So when you consume cannabis, whether it's inhaled or an edible form, it's getting up into the brain. That's how it has its psychoactive effects, and it's going to stimulate these receptors. And a lot of these receptors are actually located in circuitry in the brain that affects eating. And so it is through those receptors that you get stimulation of appetite. And there does seem to be some particular preference for higher fat, higher sugar, kinds of foods that these drugs can stimulate. There actually was a drug on the market that blocked cannabinoid receptors that was being marketed for appetite suppression, like as an anti-obesity kind of agent. It's called Rimonabant, and it's interesting. So this is a little bit anecdotal. I'm not sure if this is true, but I know it was tested extensively in humans, and one of the big clinical trials was in Dutch people. And if you know about the history of decriminalized or legal cannabis use, the Netherlands is a place where it's been decriminalized and more legal for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
So apparently a lot of people dropped out of that trial because they found out that when they took this drug, their cannabis didn't work anymore. And that's how it works.
Amazing.
Did not like that.
I hope they published an independent paper on that observation. That's
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's out there.
Wow.
That's the anecdote. But what did happen and what is documented is that it does suppress appetite. Blocking those receptors suppresses appetite. So kind of the anti-munchies, right? Mm-hmm. But also, in a good number of people and an unfortunate number of people, it reduced kind of overall enjoyment of everything. So, and there actually was an increased rate of attempts at suicide in the people who were taking Rimonabant. And so it got pulled off the market, and it really actually put a big damper on any investigation of, trying to come up with appetite suppressing drugs that might work by kind of targeting this brain reward circuitry. Because if you think about it, right, you don't want to just take away reward of all kinds. If you're looking for something that's going to help people maybe with compulsive eating or, that very specifically that kind of thing, you want something to be more specific. Mm-hmm. And you want to still be able to enjoy other things in your life. So that became a real concern that any drug that has this kind of effect could have these other bad effects.
The brain is hard. Holy crap.
Yeah.
That is... I mean, how do you feel? I don't experiment with people, and obviously you don't. You're mostly rat-based, but you also collaborate with people that do. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you feel as a researcher doing that study? And one of the conclusions is suicide rates went up, which tangentially, or indirectly, you caused that as a researcher, right?
Yeah, I cannot imagine. That must be very hard.
Yeah, I mean that's.
And the kind of work that I do collaboratively. is just not that kind of thing. Like there's just no harm going to come to people.
Yeah.
We, I should say my collaborator, Pam Keel in psychology, she brings people into the laboratory and like tests their responses to food, for example. So we'll have people come in and have a test meal where they're drinking a milkshake, basically. That's a very large and very filling milkshake. And we're asking them about how full they feel, but also taking their blood and measuring their hormone responses to food and things like that. I know she's done some experiments where she's given drugs, but never experimental drugs, drugs only that were actually, really safe and well known for decades. So I don't have experience with that kind of, testing something that you really don't know if it might have effects. And I think, we need people to do those things, but that must feel bad when it doesn't work or has a bad side effect.
So Lori has combined two of our previous questions, but we're happy to follow up on this. Do you think eating disorders, specifically anorexia, is curable or similar to alcoholism, where you say someone is a recovering anorexic? I mean, but the alcoholism thing, the recovering, that's a large byproduct of AA, right? Because one of their steps is like, you're not in control of it. But that's not foundationally true, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah, so there's some evidence out there that there are certainly people who go into recovery for substance use disorder and they may be totally abstinent for some time, but actually be able at some point to kind of reintroduce that and be able to manage a smaller quantity.
Yeah.
I don't know that the rates of success with that are any worse.
Yeah.
So that's, and with anorexia, or any of the eating disorders, again, this is something where it's different from a substance use disorder, right? Where, because you can't not eat or be around food or around food stimuli, that's just part of life, right? So, I think it's a little different in that respect, but people absolutely do recover from anorexia nervosa, typically going to need treatment for that. It's not something that most people are going to 100% recover on their own, especially with the weight regain and feeding, getting, I guess, comfortable with eating again and not restricting. That's something that people definitely, most people definitely are going to need help with, but people do. And do recover for the rest of their lives. I think, if there's the underlying biological risk is there, if I were, for example, the mom of someone who was recovering from an eating disorder, I'd probably always worry that it could get triggered again. There is some data suggesting that eating disorders, we know they're commonly emerge in younger people. There is some data, I think particularly this data is for binge eating, suggesting that as people get older, risk is reduced and there will be people who go into remission just kind of with age. So I don't know that that's true for anorexia nervosa so much as I know the data is there for binge eating. So there's some element there.
So that to dive into that aging out, do you think that's a biological thing, or that's we can't dissociate biology, obviously, but is that like you age out of certain things like lactose intolerance increases as you get older and things like that, or is it the like you just don't give a shit about social pressures at some point?
I think that's really hard to know for sure, and that's something that I'd want to really ask my clinical colleagues their opinion about, because that I don't know. There obviously are biological changes, but also the social situation is really different. Yeah,
like the pressures are just very different. The insecurity you have as a 15 to 25-year-old is just it's so much higher than any other phase in your life, which is crazy. All right, Scuzzbot, is there any correlation between eating disorders and GI issues?
Yes. So not necessarily like someone has a GI problem and therefore they're going to have an eating disorder, that kind of thing. But I think there can be kind of a both ways element here. Some people may, I was just at a meeting in June where we were in a symposium about this, and there was a gastroenterologist talking about this. So there is some evidence that some folks who have kind of GI complaints, I guess I would say. So sort of like not feeling great in a gastrointestinal sense, might start to food restrict in terms of like trying to figure out like what is it that is making me not feel good. So everybody knows someone who's gluten-free, you know, or who is trying gluten-free because they hope that it might help them, or is trying or dairy-free, or, you know, trying other kinds of elimination diets. And for people who have kind of maybe unexplained GI pain or discomfort, that could be like a kind of a way in to starting to food restrict and be really eventually start eliminating large kind of categories of food. And there's some data to suggest that anorexia may be triggered by that weight loss, that kind of metabolic deficit to begin with. So if a person sort of starts to go down that road and starts restricting more and more and more and loses weight, that could be a triggering kind of event. So that could happen on that front. The other thing that can happen, that does happen, is once someone has an eating disorder and has had it for a while, they can have GI problems as a result of the disorder. So with bulimia nervosa, for example, or binge eating disorder, really, really large meals, really, really large binges can cause changes in the stomach muscle, and gastric emptying doesn't function normally after those experiences. And also purging, if someone is vomiting a lot or taking laxatives, that's going to have an effect on the GI tract. So you can get those kinds of problems. And then also refeeding in anorexia nervosa, when someone's been really, you know, restricting themselves for a long time, and now they're starting to get food back, or they need to actually have a GI tube to, you know, sometimes in severe cases, someone has to be intubated to save their life. Those are situations where you can have gastrointestinal problems during that process. So definitely a lot of possible relationships there.
All right, Kylie asking the important questions. If I'm 99 pounds and I eat 1 pound of Doritos, am I 1% Dorito?
For a little while, maybe. You know, so the gastrointestinal tract is technically not, the things that are inside your gastrointestinal tract, technically not in your body.
Yeah.
Even though it is inside you. Think of it, you're really like a giant donut. Yeah, exactly. Or a bagel hole. I'm from New York City, so bagel. Yeah.
I mean, so if you ate a pound of Doritos, what percentage of that would be digested? I mean, most of it wouldn't be.
There's a good amount of fiber in there for sure.
Yeah.
That would not be, but there's plenty of simple carb there for sure. That would end up.
But I mean, even in terms of uptake rate, because like 1 pound that's a lot to process fairly quickly, right?
Yeah, that would be a lot.
Man, your predictions were all wrong. You should add that one as my 1% Dorito.
Yeah.
Oh, you are what you eat, ladies and gentlemen. Man, that's funny. Follow up by Kylie. If I drop soap on the floor, is the floor clean or is the soap dirty? You don't have to answer that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're an hour and a half into the stream. You can keep playing this. We can switch over games. It's totally up to you. What do you want to do? What are you in the mood for?
Why don't we switch over? I'm, slow.
No worries.
I am not going to beat this game tonight.
You've made progress, though. So what do you want to switch to? We have Zelda. We have... What can we do? Mario. We could do original Zelda.
We can do Zelda, I guess.
You want to do Breath of the Wild or the original?
Yeah, let's do Breath of the Wild a little bit.
All right, so let's change that over on Switch.
Okay. Cool. So
the freelancer following up with the important question: Cool Ranch Doritos or Nacho Cheese Doritos? What percentage? Welcome to Ask a Scientist Gaming. We have a PhD scientist in neuroscience of eating, and we're asking about Dorito percentages. I love nacho cheese Doritos. We have solved it. Oh, very fun. All right, so we're going to switch over to Zelda, a little bit of Breath of the Wild. I apologize if that's too loud. Anyone, let me know if the volume's too loud, and we'll adjust it accordingly. Scuzzbot has requested a factoid.
all right.
Oh man, I have that somewhere. I got to bring him up. I completely forgot to bring up my emails. Give me a second. We'll find this real quick.
Okay.
While we wait for
While
our
you
factoid. Oh, you
find
got two
that.
factoids. All right.
Okay.
Okay, here's our list.
All right. So let's see. Here's one. If you were to lay out the small intestines of an adult human in a single line, which you don't want to do, you'd be dead. Those small intestines would be 22 feet long. There's a lot of intestine
As
in our
shown
guts.
in Braveheart, I think they had that scene. So
Yes.
he didn't last long. With 22
Yes.
feet, I mean, going back to the Dorito question, that's
Yeah.
why we can process it, right? It's a
Yeah.
surface area problem.
Yes, so right, and that's what's going on in the small intestines is we're doing all of that really digestion and absorption. In the stomach, where food goes first, it's going to solid food is going to get all mixed up, dissolved into what's called chyme. So that's your gastric acid that's kind of doing a lot of breakdown, but nothing gets absorbed in the stomach. Everything, all the food that is absorbed, all the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, everything, that all happens in the small intestine. So that's where we need a lot of room for that to occur. And the small intestine is very narrow, so a long space for that.
Yeah, makes sense. Follow up by Sensor Builder. Welcome to the stream. Thank you for the first time chat. Click the follow button. But also they want to know, how much does that range from children to adults?
The size of the small intestine?
Yeah.
Oh, that must be a pretty big range, but I don't know. I don't know that because how do we have that estimate? Somebody must have looked.
Yeah, no,
right?
I'm sure it's...
I guess they haven't done that in children.
I gotta assume that scales proportionally, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know how to think about that one. But speaking of which, we have a prediction mildly related to that question. So we're going to throw that up right now because we have a bunch of predictions and we want to get through all of them. So if you guys, if you guys aren't following, click the follow button. You're going to get a bunch of standard internet units. And on Ask a Scientist Gaming, instead of asking game-related predictions, we ask you science questions. And so we're going to pop up a science question right now, and this is related to the expertise of my guest, Dr. Diane Williams, who's a psychologist as well in the neuroscience program at FSU. The question is, we are born with a fixed number of neurons. Is that true or is that false? And so those of you not familiar, click that predict button at the top of your screen. From that predict button, you will be able to bet as many standard internet units you want on whether this question is true or false. We are born with a fixed number of neurons, true or false. Note you're on honor code here. You can't look this up on Google or ChatGPT or whatever your favorite flavor of cheating is. Instead, answer based on the knowledge you have already or things that you're interested in or what, I don't know, subjectively what you think is true. So feel free. These internet units are not good for anything beyond this channel. You can make us take a drink. You can request a factoid. You can unlock emotes. Other than that, this is just about pride. Do you know if we are born with a fixed number of neurons? Is that statement true or is that false? You guys have about a minute to get that answer. Anything you want to add to this?
No, I think that was a pretty straightforward one.
Yeah, no, it's just squeezing that spiel on the 2-minute timeline. And there's another drink if you want it. I wasn't sure how far you
got a bit left here.
Kylie, if two vegans are arguing, is it still considered a beef?
That's a good one. My husband is vegan, so I'm going to have to tell him that. Yeah.
Is it still considered a beef? We are born with a fixed number of neurons. You guys have about 30 seconds. Put those answers in there right now. Bet is based on your degree of confidence. We are born with a fixed number of neurons. Is that true or is that false? So I saw Scuzzbot, Lori, I saw you had questions there. We'll get back to those in a little bit, but thank you for joining us. Senior Build, I'm assuming that's Senior without the tilde. Senior Builder, thank you for the follow. Thank you for joining us. You'll get notifications about future streams where we'll stream every other Wednesday night. Well, typically we'll be off for several weeks because the holiday break. But thank you for joining us. If you have questions for Diane, she's happy to answer those. Throw those in chat. If you want to know anything about the neuroscience of eating and related things, we are happy to answer those. All right. So, Diane, what is the answer? We are born with a fixed number of neurons. Is that true or is that false?
That is most likely false. In humans, definitely false. In other animals.
Wow. All right,
Yeah,
so congratulations on your 5.62 to 1 payout. So 18% in terms of the betting said false, 82% said true. And so is this one of those pseudo old wives' tales where you're born with a certain number of neurons?
Yeah, well, we did really believe that until fairly recently in neuroscience history. And it's true for a lot of the brain. You really are, it's one of the reasons why babies' heads are so big, because they come with a pretty large brain to begin with, larger than relative to their bodies than we have as adults. And that's partly why, because we do have a lot of the neurons, most of the neurons that we're going to have, forever. But we do have places in the brain, not certain places in the brain, where we have determined that there are new neurons born. There. So there are areas, there's a place called the subventricular zone that is kind of near the corpus callosum, for people who know what that even is and who would care. So it's a location in the brain where in rodents, there's great evidence, and in other types of animals too, other mammals, very solid, without question, evidence that there are new neurons being born all the time. And those neurons migrate from that location to other places in the brain, especially the hippocampus, which is really important for memories, for us to be able to store new memories, new long-term memories. And so we think that neurogenesis, that birth of new neurons, is a really important part of learning and memory. But also other things. There are other brain areas where there's evidence for a lesser amount, probably, of new neuron birth, but it's detectable. The ways that we know this, we can do this in a really kind of invasive way in non-human animals in laboratories. We can't do some of those things in humans. So the evidence in humans comes from looking at postmortem tissue, and that's why there's still a little bit of a controversy. For a while, it was sort of settled, like, okay, we have the evidence, like, definitely this is something that happens in humans. And then a study came out a few years ago suggesting that actually maybe not, and maybe they only found that because of the method that they used. And then another study came out that said, no, they only found that it wasn't because of their method. And so there's still a little bit of debate about that for humans, but I think most neuroscientists would say, there's no reason to think that we're so different from all the other animals. We probably have it too.
I mean, but in terms of, we know brain repair does happen, right, to some degree. The assumption, if that wasn't true, would be it's mobility of neurons and they're just, moving to different locations?
So plasticity is what we call this. Okay. And the idea that the brain changes and neurons change. Neurons neurons that are still there can form new connections. I see. And so if, say, an area is destroyed, the neurons that were there, yes, they're dead, but the neurons right next door could kind of move in.
I see. So that's the idea.
And make new connections. So when a neuron's axon, the kind of part of the neuron that transmits information, when that's cut, other neurons may come in and kind of jump on. It may, regrow other parts, make new connections that it didn't have before. So there's a lot of changes in inputs and outputs that can happen without new neurons being born. Yeah. That are probably really important for recovering from injury, for learning and memory, for all of the ways that experience can affect us, right?
I was going to say, one of my longest lasting memories from high school psychology class, or I don't remember what the class was, the case of Phineas Gange's.
Oh, yeah,
the metal rod
Gage.
Through the head. Gage,
Yeah.
Where he got a metal rod through the head and it changed his personality. But he didn't lose function, right? He was, for the most part, okay.
That's the story, yeah. So he had this metal rod. He was a railroad worker, and it was a railroad spike that kind of got blown through the front of his head. So it was his prefrontal cortex in particular. And the images of what happened to this guy's head are remarkable. And it's pretty amazing that he lived, but he did.
Oh, I love the Google search. The photo of him with the rod.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah, the kind of famous quote in one of the studies that talks about him is, he was no longer Gage. He had changed. Although there are other tales, other kind of anecdotal stories that he was always a jerk, And because that was the story, was that he was a wonderful man, and then
he
after this
became a
accident,
jerk.
he became impulsive and abusive, and his whole personality changed. But that does match what we know about what that area of the brain does. That area of the brain is really important for impulse control and thinking and decision making and planning and kind of all the things that you think of as kind of being a responsible grown-up, right? That area of the brain is important for those things. So having it destroyed, it would make sense that would happen.
Yeah.
So that's one of the early evidence that specific parts of the brain have specific functions.
I mean, I don't want to use the words fun case study, but an incidental human experiment that it's one data point, but still you can learn a lot from that extreme. All right. So we talked about brain plasticity. Kylie, I promise we'll get back to your factoids in a little bit. Cuddle Puppy has a follow-up. The Kardashians are experts at plastics. Cuddle Puppy, thank you for joining us as usual. But we have a question about plasticity. And so brain plasticity is the idea of repair and mobility of neurons and responding to things. So we're going to put up a prediction right now. If you're not following us, click the follow button. You'll get your standard internet units to gamble on this question. The question is, or the true-false question is, physical activity increases brain plasticity. Is this true or is this false? Is the idea of working out, does that help repair the brain, or does that do something else? Maybe inhibit the brain repair process, whatever it might be. I mean, we know sleep helps, right? But the question here is, does physical activity increase brain plasticity or decrease it? Does it increase it, true or false? Anything you want to add to this one?
No, I think that was clear.
Man, you saw the 42 character cut down on these. It makes it non-trivial. I write test questions for class. I should try to do a 42 character test question for class and see how it goes. But yeah, you guys have about a minute and a half to answer this question. In the meantime, we have a request for a factoid. So, we got the intestine. First one is done. Any of the rest you want to do?
Let's see. How about this one? Human brain surgery is often done while the patient is awake.
Oh, man. How fun is that?
Yeah.
I like the one that there's somebody I don't know if this was a TV show or they actually did this, but somebody playing the violin during a surgery. And can you explain to the audience why they do that?
Yeah, so a couple things that are important to note, right? Number one is that the brain tissue itself does not have any pain receptors, or there's no ability for the brain tissue to feel pain, right? So that's important, because if you're going to actually be putting a probe or whatever into the brain directly, you wouldn't want a person awake feeling, right? So the way that it works is the person's scalp, will be anesthetized. They will be put into a device that is actually not too dissimilar from what we use for rodents for brain surgery or non-human primates. It's called a stereotaxic device. For humans, it's a little different. The idea is that it would immobilize your head completely, because the last thing you want is a surgeon has a probe inside your brain and you move.
You sneeze. You're wow, it's blundered.
My hippocampus is gone. So sorry, you don't want that. Right. So that's part of it. You're in this kind of device that's sort of holding your head still, and a reason to, it's not just because it won't hurt, so why don't we just do this. It's partly that when you're doing brain surgery, and I really should speak of this as when those people are doing human brain surgery, because I do not, it's not me or probably anybody listening.
We are yet to have a brain surgeon on stream.
One day, we've got some at TMH.
No, that's
sure.
true. That is very true.
Yeah. You want to know what's going on with the person's functioning, because if the reason someone's going to do brain surgery is to remove a tumor, or sometimes something like repairing an aneurysm, something like that, you're gonna want to make sure that especially if you're removing something, you're gonna want to make sure that you are not removing something critically important, right? So sometimes there might be, for example, stimulating electrodes where the surgeon and often a research team will be involved, because when do you have a chance to stimulate someone's brain? So the patient will be, there awake but immobile, and the team will stimulate a particular brain area, and they'll ask, like, how do you feel? Right? Or they'll ask the person to do something like, can you move your hand, or can you, count to 10, or can you add, or there's all kinds of functions that you might ask someone to do while you're stimulating a particular part of the brain electrically. And it may be for the purpose of the surgery to make sure you don't ruin something, destroy something that's important, but it also may be for research purposes. So if a patient consents in this situation, we can learn like an enormous amount about what those areas of the brain are doing in humans. And so there's some really, really cool studies of all sorts using this kind of technique. One of them that I particularly like is stimulating an area called the amygdala. And this produces in a lot of people a very, very strong feeling like someone is behind them and about to attack them. Like they feel threatened and, afraid. Even though they know, remember, the patient absolutely knows where they are and what is going on. They know this is not true, but it produces that feeling, like you're in a dark alley and you hear footsteps behind you.
Yeah.
There's some other ones that are really interesting about motor control, so movement control. So one that I think is really interesting kind of separates the intention to move from the movement itself. So they stimulated in certain areas and found that it created this feeling like I am going to move my hand. But not necessarily the actual movement. The actual hand movement is controlled by a different place. But that intention to move is separable. And in one study, they actually produced the feeling and belief that the individual moved, even though they did not actually move their hand. So you can kind of start to dissociate, right, different parts of the brain that have different functions, and even start to maybe understand like those building blocks of our conscious experience.
All right, so we're going to have to catch up on a few questions. We're going to speed run a few of these. We'll do 1-minute answers if you're willing to do the quick and summary. So, Cuddle Puppies calling you out on the brain not feeling pain. Not true. My brain felt pain when my 31st wife left me. So, that's fair. Scuzzbot followed up with, what is a headache then? We feel pain in our brain. Is it actually in our brain?
Yeah, so headaches, to the extent that we understand them, and there is particularly for migraine, we have a lot to learn. It's really actually a travesty that so many people suffer from that, and we don't know as much as we should about those things. But headache is predominantly the blood vessels and meninges. So around the brain, it's not your brain itself, but around the brain, we have these protective membranes. And they are, there are 3 of them, called the meninges. And that is where you are feeling when you have a headache. That is typically what's happening. It can have to do with like blood vessel dilation. There can be headache related to cerebrospinal fluid. There can be, so when there's like swelling in those areas, there can be headache. When you have a traumatic brain injury, that it can be affecting those things. So it's not the brain tissue itself, but it's that part of your head. Right.
All right, a couple follow-up. Oh, sorry, we should do our prediction answer. Physical activity increases brain plasticity, true or false? What is the answer?
The answer is true.
It does. 94% of betting agreed with you.
Wow. Everybody's up on their neuroscience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. All right. So working out is good for your brain. It's good for brain repair. It is good for you for a lot of reasons. So,
yes.
Senior Builder redeemed Take a Drink. Cheers, Senior Builder. Cheers, Diane. Thank you for joining me on a Wednesday night. The last 2 weeks of classes, we're drinking alcohol on Wednesday night and playing video games. It's pretty good.
It's a great way to spend time.
I can't complain. I'm enjoying it.
I don't have a test tomorrow.
Exactly. So the reason I do Wednesday night is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I teach at 8 a.m. But Thursday, I don't at all. So it works out pretty nice. Senior Builder, cheers, Mom.
Yes, that's my 16-year-old son.
That's awesome. Well, welcome to the stream, Senior Builder. Click the follow button, but also thank you for joining us. Hopefully your mom is doing you proud by playing video games and talking about science. So that's awesome.
He gave me some suggestions on what games I should play, but it was pretty sad. He was like, "Yeah, you can probably do like a racing game and also talk," and I just crashed that car every time.
You tried. You tested.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for the training. I appreciate that. Senior Builder, if your mom becomes an alcoholic, it's your fault. Yeah, that's true. You're making your mom drink. All right. Hi, I hardly know her. Yes, we'll get up on this question. The question by I hardly know her. Thank you for the first time chat. Thank you for joining us. Click the follow button. If you could be any neuropeptide hormone, what would it be and why? There is a correct answer. Cuddle Puppy has a reply. It's Neuropepsi-Cola because it's the choice of a new generation.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I am old enough to get that reference, but if you could be any neuropeptide hormone, what would it be and why?
Boy, I feel like professionally I have to say GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1, because that is the peptide and hormone that I have studied for most of my career, and it's the one that in some ways I owe much of my success to. Because of how much cool stuff we've discovered about it, and that other people are interested in it, which is really important because you need to get money, you need to get grant money to do this job. And so if other people weren't excited by it, I'd have a big problem.
I mean, so that's your professional choice in terms of like impact on behavior or how it affects the body. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, well, in terms of eating behavior, I think that one is still my choice because that's the super important one. Cholecystokinin is another one that's really important for eating behavior. That's kind of a little bit more classic. It's also produced by the small intestines in response to food, but it's been studied for many more decades. So that's one that is exciting. But I think in terms of one that's sort of interesting and has a big role in just all kinds of behavior, oxytocin is another favorite, which I've also done some work on. But oxytocin affects food intake, but it also has a big role in social behavior, a role in the stress response, a role in childbirth, and lots and lots of different things. So oxytocin, definitely important winning hormone.
I hardly know her said that is the correct answer. So boo, your previous was not the correct answer. Your which one was it? It was the glucagon-like peptide 1 was not the correct answer. No. The story was compelling, so I'll let her have that. There we go. Oh, that's awesome. All right, so speed run. We have let me see. Let's catch up on a few of these questions. Sorry, we're it's very popular. So you work in an area that's like literally impactful for everyone, and I'm a bit jealous. Like I do ultra fast spectroscopy on moving electrons on a femtosecond time scale, and most people that does impact your life, but you don't know how. But food is just something directly impactful, which is awesome because everyone's engaging in it. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you for answering these questions. It's really a pleasure to learn. All right, Lori wants to know any data on eating disorders being genetic, and genetic means presumably inherited from.
Yeah, there's a lot of data on that. So we've known for a long time that eating disorders have a reasonably high heritability.
Oh,
so
sorry to interrupt. Before you go on, Dr. N PhD is raiding with the Party 5. Welcome to the stream. Thank you for the raid. Thank you. I hope your stream went well. What were you guys up to tonight? We'd love to hear about it. But anyone just joining us, anyone that's raiding, our guest tonight is Dr. Diana Williams, who is an expert in psychology and neuroscience of eating. And so, yeah, she's playing a little bit of Zelda Breath of the Wild while she answers questions from chat. So if you guys have any questions, thank you for joining us again. It's a pleasure to have you here. Sorry to interrupt. We got a raid. Yeah. They brought their viewers in. So
awesome.
All right.
Yeah. So we have definitely known for a long time that there's something about eating disorders that's inherited. So studies like that are, looking at family relationships, and doesn't tell you what genes or how many, or how much. But then in more recent years, there's come to be techniques that can actually start to identify genes. So genome-wide association studies have been starting to get done. These are studies where you're looking at many, many, many thousands of people, and you're sequencing large amounts of their genomes. Sometimes not everything, but sometimes everything. So this is only possible, right, since we were able to start sequencing at large scale for relatively cheap. Those types of studies will look for what we call single nucleotide polymorphisms, so spots where DNA is just different, right, where it varies, and try to find places where it correlates with the presence of an eating disorder or eating disorder symptom, something like that.
Dr. NPHD said, sorry to interrupt, just engaging a little bit here. They did an easy stream designing their first tattoo, which is a simulated DNA diffraction pattern, which is pretty amazing.
That's awesome.
Dr. NPHD, I have a really fun exercise for this. If you have a laser pointer and you take a spring out of just a standard pen, any pen that has a clicker and has a spring, you can take the spring, you can take the laser pointer and shine it against the wall, and you can simulate the X-ray diffraction pattern with visible light. So like, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but DNA has a helices, right? And if you do X-rays, you get the very common photo 54 from Rosalind Franklin. You can simulate that with a laser pointer and a normal pen because the wavelengths are right, so it does that diffraction pattern. So awesome you're doing a tattoo with that. Fun factoid on tying that together. Then got distracted about learning serpentinized mice who had a Hox gene knocked out, so the poor mice had no arms or legs. Have you heard of this?
Wow. No, I don't know if I'm familiar with that. That kind of thing can happen, though. When I do work with transgenic mice, I don't make them. I get them from other people who make them. But, we are only going to use the ones that live and are relatively normal in their bodies. But it happens, and sometimes it's on purpose, right? That people think this is a gene that might be involved in limb development, and so we're going to mess with it and see what happens. But sometimes your intention is not what turns out to be the case, and you find something serendipitously. So yeah, that can happen.
Oh, cuddle puppy. They made thalidomide mice. Are you familiar with this? The thalidomide.
Yeah.
Cuddle puppy, too soon. Sure, it's been 70 years, still too soon. You technically have 2 minutes to live, but every time you breathe, the timer resets. What? All right. Wow. Is a pizza. Oh, Texas Space Agency. Welcome to the stream. Welcome back. Is rating with a party of 13. I hope your stream went well. Presumably you're working in the shop. What were you making? What were you creating? Welcome to the stream. Anyone that's joining us from Texas Space Agency stream, we are Ask a Scientist Gaming, mediocre gameplay, expert science. Every other Wednesday night, we tend to have a guest on. It'll be a while till our next guest. It'll be January, actually, but usually it's every other Wednesday night. We have an expert guest on who answers question. Our guest tonight is Dr. Diane Williams, who's a professor in psychology and also affiliated with the Neuroscience program at Florida State University. She is an expert in the neuroscience of eating, in particular, studying both, environmental as well as genetic factors that dictate eating and its impact on things like eating disorders as well as metabolic diseases. So if you guys have any questions in chat, I throw them in chat. We'll be happy to answer them. We have a bunch to catch up on. A lot of viewers tonight, a lot of people interested, so you're very popular.
Lovely.
How's Zelda going? I haven't even been paying attention to the game.
I'm just running around. This is pretty early in the game for me. My younger son has beaten this game many times, but I have actually not played it all through myself. So I started a game myself a few weeks back, and I'm pretty early, still kind of getting parts of the map.
Ooh, Texan Space Agency. Hate to raid and run, having some pretty bad Crohn's symptoms, and got to figure that out. I'll be back. See you in a bit. Love what you do. Thank you, Texan. Thank you for always joining us. Texan is actually a blacksmith that streams on Twitch, which is kind of fun.
Awesome.
But Crohn's disease, how much do you know about that?
A little bit, yeah, and that's a rough one.
Shout out for Texan. Good luck with that. I'm sorry. Hopefully you have your cell phone with you. You can join the stream. Not. Wow, that's pretty brutal. All right. Dr. NPHD, I don't want to keep distracting, but the paper was examining evolution of snake loss of limbs. It's largely a 17 base pair deletion and an enhancer of Sonic Hedgehog. Interesting.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I'm shocked they let the mice live to adults, but the results were striking. The deletions were done with CRISPR-Cas9. I mean, that's a moral conundrum dealing with that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something, if people are interested in talking about animal research, I mean, I use animals in my work, but, I think for a lot of people who use animals, we don't use animals because we hate them and we want to hurt them, right? Like, we use animals because we think there are really important questions that, could impact human health and the world, and this is the only way to do it. But we also have like a lot of boundaries and regulations about what we're willing to do, and different people have feel differently about that. But there are kinds of work that I would not do, right? That other people might do, and even things like work on pain and trying to find medication for pain or cures for painful diseases. Like, I'm glad people do that, but I won't be me.
I mean, and that's like, I don't think people appreciate how hard it is to do vertebrate studies in terms of the approval you have to have, the procedures you have to follow, like the humanity, the treatment, like all of this is meticulously outlined. It's rigorously controlled. Like, it's breathtaking, especially the first time I had to do IMB per approval for just like studying human test outcomes. Like, what can you actually present? What is acceptable? So yeah, that's absolutely incredible. But I mean, to follow up on that, one of our standard questions, and this one's can be controversial, but unlimited budget, no moral qualms, what would you do? And so to give you context, Sarah Hart, for example, would love to make twins, triplets, quintuplets, and separate them at birth and study the outcomes. So you can go, or Matt Hauer, a sociologist, would like to put an ankle bracelet on everyone in a city and then send a hurricane at it and see where they go. So no moral qualms. Yeah. Keep in mind this will be on YouTube, but also, I mean, dozens of people will see it. So
it is really hard to throw that all away. But I mean, this is one of the things. Like, I just recently was writing a book chapter with my colleague Pam Keel about eating disorders, and we're interested especially in gut-brain communication in eating disorders, and the data in humans on whether there is dysfunction in a lot of these gut hormones is so confounded, because you obviously can't assign people to have an eating disorder or not, right? So there's a lot of kind of, is this a pre-existing thing that maybe contributes to the disorder? Is this something that is a result of the disorder, right? So like when you engage in disordered eating behavior for a really long time, maybe that causes gut dysfunction. So if there were a way, and we don't have morals, to randomly assign people to, anorexia or binging or something like that, and then look at the consequences in really like a causal way, that would clarify a lot of things.
I mean, you kind of talked about doing that with the animals, right? Like,
we
in
do
terms
that with
of making
animals,
cake available, like you could control that, assuming somebody wanted to live in a bubble, and that's really intense.
Right. It would be. It could be doable, maybe. I mean, like starvation studies, have been done.
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. N PhD. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the raid. It's been a pleasure. Guys, check out in chat. I put a link to their page. Any education streamer, we advocate for them. Follow them. Watch their content. Learn things from them, especially the tattoo art. That's kind of fun. We do not do anything that exotic or elegant on this stream. But thank you for coming by. I hope you enjoy your evening. And we'll see you. Hopefully, cross paths in the near future. All right. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Man, we have so many questions to catch up. Yeah, there's a bunch of them. King Willie just had a comment. Don't have many questions, just stopping by to say I love the stream in this game. Dr. Diana Williams seems awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no question there, just an awesome comment. All right, Scuzzbot had a question a while ago. I apologize for taking so long to get to this. What kind of resources are available for family members with eating disorders?
So the National Eating Disorders Association is a good one, NEDA, good place to go for resources on that. That's a great website, and they have like
what was it? Is EDA?
NEDA.
NEDA.
And they have kind of patient and family facing resources. So definitely a good kind of resource. There's resources on the website of the National Institute for Mental Health as well. That's another one.
So National Eating Disorder. National Eating Disorder Hotline.
There's I think it's the second one on the Google there, the National Eating Disorders Association, NEDA.
Yep.
Yeah, so and you'll find stuff there. There's a lot of information available online, and of course, this is always the issue, right? With anything on the internet, you want to look for like the reliable experts. You don't want to go with something random like on some forum somewhere. And there might be people who are posting good information out there, but there might also be people posting, totally incorrect things, myths, and stuff that's not going to be helpful. So going with like those types of organizations where you can be a little bit more sure about their quality.
As is the nature of the internet. I hardly know her. Thank you for the follow. Thank you for joining us. Your questions have been a lot of fun. Yeah, we appreciate the follows. It helps with our visibility and getting our science out there. So we really appreciate that. So thank you for that. Couple things. Huggy Beer has requested a factoid. So let's do another one. I lost it. I'll find it. All right. There we go. There's your list.
Okay, let's see. Well, since we were talking about eating disorders, we'll go with this one. People of all sizes can have eating disorders. Right, so a lot of times we think about eating disorders and being kind of anorexia nervosa is kind of emblematic, and you're thinking about a person who's lost a lot of weight and is now, extremely thin, and that absolutely does happen. But also, eating disorders, and including anorexia nervosa, can happen in individuals who are at a higher body weight. And so it's something that, folks can be not diagnosed if we have that idea that in order for a person to have a disorder, they must be extremely thin. There definitely are people who are of higher body weights who have even anorexia nervosa.
So do not judge body image issues or whatnot based on size or whatever it might be, because it can happen to anyone. All right. I hardly know her, asking for a colleague in Australia. How do you feel about self-experimentation in the life sciences? So correct me if I'm wrong. It was the first, what did they do? They did a heart. They fed a wire into their heart. Do you know what I'm talking about? The early ones?
Yeah. I mean, there's a long and wonderful history of self-experimentation. I'm actually all for it. If I would say you want to be safe. But for example, when we were setting up a study where we were going to get people to come into the lab and take these, do these test meals and take their blood and measure all these hormones, to get the pilot data, we got a bunch of us to come in and do it.
That's awesome.
And actually, my husband is a registered nurse. He was the phlebotomist. He came and gave us all IVs and took the blood.
Wow.
So it was a family thing. And I was so into it. I got to test my own gut hormone responses to food. I love that.
Yeah.
So I'm totally for that kind of thing. Now, I would not probably, especially having children now, I probably would not take an experimental drug, for example. That would be, less of an exciting thing to me. But measuring, kind of collecting data from myself, I'm totally into that, and would recommend that if you have the opportunity.
I think one of my favorite self-experimentation was the stomach ulcers.
Yes,
It was bacteria-based, right?
Yeah,
No one believed him,
absolutely.
so he drank it.
Yeah, and how brilliant, right? He was right, and he proved it.
Yeah.
But I think, also that's a situation, again, where, he did harm himself, but he also knew how he would cure himself.
How to treat it. Yeah.
That's pretty important.
No, that's a good point, because if he was wrong, it wouldn't have mattered. If he was right, he knew how to cure it because he knew the cause, which is, so that was, in terms of risk reward, that was probably a really good scenario. All right. Quick catching up on a few of these. Lori wants to know, or replying to Team WEED, Team Weed. All right. Clean Plate Club was a thing when I was young. Nowadays, I prefer the leftovers for lunch the next day. I mean, is there any evidence on Team Clean Plate Club? If you're not familiar, it's basically saying celebrate your kids when they clean their plate. Is that good? Is that bad? Long-term impacts?
Yeah, so there is data on children. This is not my expertise, so I'm talking about other people's work here, but I'm familiar with it. That probably the healthiest way to go is not to pressure kids to eat more. Is really, you want to let them listen to their own biological signals, right? So and this is what everybody ideally wants to do, right? Is really stop when you feel full, and pushing someone, especially a kid, to keep eating when they really feel genuinely full. That is kind of teaching them to ignore those signals, right? And not trust their own body's interoception. And so, is that going to lead to eating disorders? Not necessarily. But is that maybe going to cause some, impaired relationship with food? So we don't think that's, the greatest thing. But what is recommended is, especially when you have like a picky eater, which does happen, and again, there's a biological basis for that, is to try to encourage just try to just introduce new foods, having like a not a one bite rule necessarily, like where you're going to punish the kid if they don't try. Yeah. But just like that constant encouragement. Daniel Tiger has a little song about it. Try new food. Yeah. So that idea.
Let's be clear. Daniel Tiger has a song about everything you need to know in life.
Yes, this is really true.
There's hundreds of songs from Daniel Tiger, and they're all good advice.
It's really true. It's really true. So those are the kinds of recommendations that people who study child eating and development have now. Like that you don't want to be very restrictive either. So like trying to, creating an environment where like your child will never have sugar. That's not actually great, right? Because that also creates like a, forbidden fruit.
Yeah, I was going to say abstinence only.
That's not good.
Abstinence only does not work in any scenario ever, as far as the evidence is concerned. Do not do it. All right, Texan Space Agency. My daughter AJ had brisket at 6 months. I gave her a taste, and she damn near sucked it out of my hand. I had to put my boot on the table and yank it out of her mouth. How true that story is, we don't know. Texan had another follow-up comment. I can't trust the internet to tell me what is wrong with my pickup, let alone something as complex as an eating disorder. That's probably generally true. All right. Team Weed has a question, eating disorder question. A few months back, I read a paper that was saying a factor that in the U.S., okay, that's not us, okay, in the U.S. to obesity is that parents and grandparents would condition kids to finish our plates regardless of actual use and stick with through adulthood. We continue eating past our hunger needs, so that goes back to the Clean Plate Club. That's what Lori was responding to.
No, there is some evidence that could contribute to that kind of thing, that real like disconnection between your body's signals and how you behave. And that's something that there's a whole like movement for intuitive eating, is this idea that you want to really like get back in touch with those signals and really listen to your body and stop eating when you feel full or eat when you feel hungry, which is also something that people who have been dieting for a really long time might have a hard time actually just eating when they feel hungry.
All right, Cuddle Puppy. Has Dr. Williams told the story of how carrots got rumored to improve eyesight? Are you familiar with this story?
So I have heard the story, but I wouldn't be a good person to tell it because I've only heard it myself.
So the rumor I heard was it was the British during World War II where they had invented radar and could see planes through radar processes. They didn't want the opposition to know that radar existed, so they made the rumor that carrots were improving their eyesight, and that's why.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm remembering correctly, that is the origin of that story. But Cuddle Puppy, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But that was when I was last heard. Texan, you often ask guests if you could perform any experiment without moral quorums. Mine would be divide a class of elementary kids and give half plant-based diet throughout their life and half supplemented with beef. Evaluate over 30 years.
Interesting.
You want to see the outcomes of that study.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, the nutrition, research with humans is so tricky, and that having that kind of control and really answering those questions in the way that we would with, rodents, would be very interesting.
But I'm going to say no moral qualms, no, I won't just take like elementary kids. I'll take an army of 1,000 of them, right? Let's have N over 1,000 and let's make this a
Right.
meaningful study, right?
Yeah.
All right, Kylie's redeemed request a factoid, so we got another one.
Okay. Let's see. How about your brain uses around 400 to 500 kilocalories of energy every day.
And so of our recommended diet of what, 2,000 calories per day?
Yeah, and that 2,000 is definitely
Nebulous.
right. It's not going to be right for a lot of people. But yeah, that's a very big chunk. People sometimes will say that, your brain consumes about 20% of your daily energy. Yeah. And it's even if you're sleeping, even if you are not doing anything particularly mentally strenuous, your brain needs a lot of energy to just live and run your body's functions.
All right, we're going to put up a prediction sometime soon, but I'll give you a question before so you can answer this. We have two to catch up on. Lori wants to know, does working on puzzles truly help with not getting dementia?
So there is some suggestive data out there. I will say the data for what can help with cognition, later in life, because aging-related dementia is what people mostly are talking about there. The data on that's really the most compelling is physical exercise, physical activity. That is really, really beneficial there. There's the evidence for, I guess, kind of intellectual, games, puzzles, things like that, is weaker, but there is some evidence that at least is suggestive. It's certainly not going to hurt you. So if it's whether or not it's going to, how much it would help is certainly a question.
Texan has tagged on, martial arts is the key for anyone. Start training today.
It's not a bad recommendation.
Cobra Kai. Thank you, Texan. And it doesn't take much activity, right? That's what people are finding. Like 20 minutes a day is enough to have really positive impacts across the board.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be super strenuous, especially for individuals who are pretty sedentary to begin with. Just walking even it has an impact, a significant impact.
Kylie, thank you for swinging by. We won't have a stream next. It's typically every other Wednesday night, but it's very hard to schedule faculty one during finals week and two during the holiday break. So our next stream will actually not be until January. I think January 10th. I'm trying to sort out the spring schedule. But yeah, come back. If you're following us, turn on your notifications. You'll only get a notification once every or twice a month. So yeah, you might as well have them on for our stream. All right. All right, we're going to put up a prediction right now, ladies and gentlemen. If you're not familiar with our stream, Ask a Scientist Gaming, Mediocre Gameplay, Expert Science, we have a guest on every other Wednesday night. Until January, we'll have a break. But our guest tonight's Dr. Diana Williams. One of the things we have our guests do is come up with science questions that we ask in chat, and we put them up as predictions. Rather than game-related, we have science-related questions. So we're putting up a prediction right now. The question is, people are left-brained or right-brained. Is that true or false? We often talk about left-brained and right-brained behaviors and things like that in quotes. Is that true or is that false? Put your predictions in there now. Anything you want to add on this one?
No, I think that was good.
Yeah, I mean, these are straightforward. About it. Yeah, we'll see what happens in the outcome here. But is left-brained and right-brained a real thing? Is that true or is that false? Click that predict button at the top of the screen. If none of you are following, click that follow button. It'll give you 300 standard internet units. Standard internet units are our internal currency that allows you to make us take drinks. You can request factoids. You can unlock emotes. Not useful for anything outside this channel, but note there's a lot of pride in answering these questions correctly, particularly if you gamble a whole lot of internet units. So put your predictions in there right now. Ooh, that's a mouthful. I've done this a few times. If you can't tell, the spiel is pretty rehearsed at this point. And Huggy Beer has redeemed Shake and Drink. Huggy Beer, thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure. Oh man, cheers. So you're good on drink?
I am, yeah, just about.
So we're at about, I think we're at 10:26 right now. At 10:30, I think we switch over to NARC.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. How's Zelda going?
Yeah.
I haven't even been paying attention. Chad has been very
moving
lively.
around the map, not doing very much. This is the frustration, I think, being early in the game, that you don't have the best weapons, and also, I'm not super practiced at like fighting monsters and stuff, so I'm at a disadvantage when it comes to fighting these things.
Man.
So yeah, exploring and just trying to. I think my approach is like brute force. Just keep trying.
The thing I like about these RPGs early gameplay is the outfits and weapons you get are just absurd combinations.
Oh yeah. This is ridiculous.
Like here's your potato shield and your banana sword, and like here's your pink top hat, and like just random. Scuzzbot wants to know, what is the tattoo on your arm?
So this is actually a pretty new one. Let's see, does that come up?
Right there.
So it's kind of upside down there, but it's a Baba Yaga house. So this is from European folklore. The Baba Yaga is a old woman, typically, who lives in a hut in the woods. She may help you or hurt you, depending on how she feels, I guess, that day. And but this hut that she lives in has bird legs, and it can move around. So I got a kind of Tallahassee themed Baba Yaga. It's surrounded by magnolia trees.
That's fun. So there's the wiki link if anyone's interested. Baba Yaga, a character from Slavic folklore who has two opposite roles. I've heard Baba Yaga is the original John Wick movie. Are you familiar with that? Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen it, but
there's a conversation where they obviously killed. Sorry for spoilers, anyone, but they killed John Wick's dog, and like he's explaining to his son like sometimes they call him Baba Yaga, and it was like the boogeyman, and it was like, no, he's the person you send to kill the boogeyman. And so it was very foreboding. I also heard about Baba Yaga. Are you familiar with Masha on Netflix? Masha Tales?
No.
Like
yes, the cartoon, right?
Yeah, exactly. Baba Yaga is in one of those stories. It's like Slavic or Russian.
Yes.
I don't know what it is, but I love those stories because they're not traditional Disney format. They're just like, wow, sometimes it ends with people dying.
That's right. Yes, the original folktales.
Uncle Bill, I learned about Baba Yaga from a Russian streamer here on Twitch.
All right.
That's awesome. All right. I Hardly Know Her has a question. Actually, let's finish up our prediction. People are left brain, right brain, true or false? What is the answer, Diana?
That is false.
It is false.
Yeah. Everybody uses both sides pretty much equally all the time.
So do you know where that came from? Where the origins of that?
Yeah,
it's very prevalent, right?
I think some of it is definitely like the sort of pop culture dissemination of some little real nugget that kind of gets turned into something else. It's true that the two hemispheres are not identical, and that there are some areas on one side versus the other that seem to be more important for certain functions. So particularly language is very lateralized, is the term we use. But it's not the case that if you like speak better, that means you're left brain. We definitely have a there's not any evidence that someone who's like more creative is, one side versus another. And we don't have any evidence that, or like rational, I think what's the distinction? It's like creative and artistic versus like rational and logical. We also don't have evidence.
Perfect right
good.
We're at 10:30. It's time for NARC.
Cool. Great.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are transitioning. Anyone that's not familiar with the stream, again, we have an expert guest on every couple weeks. One thing we force the expert guest to do at the end of the night is play a game for the NES called NARC. It is a bargain bin game that literally bargain bin when you were walking out of Blockbuster back in the day. This is the game that they would sell you for like $5 on the shelf in a pile of them. But yeah, it's called NARC, and I'm going to read this to you because I have an original copy of NARC in the box, and so I have the manual and back of the box. And so we're going to read this. Are you ready for this?
All right.
You are Max Force. Your mission: bust Mr. Big and destroy his dreaded criminal empire. Seize all contraband, stolen money, illegal weapons, use rocket bombs, high-powered machine guns, apprehend all suspects, protect the innocent, punish the guilty, stop at nothing. This was written and directed and programmed by Nancy Reagan. No, none of that's true. But we're going to win the war on drugs tonight. Diana, are you ready for this? And note that you are on the clock now. So as soon as you hit the ground and you're walking, your goal is to walk right and find doors, and I'll coach you through things along the way while we answer questions. No pressure.
All right.
But to follow up, left-brained, right-brained, mostly bullshit. That's almost entirely bullshit. I mean, what's interesting about that, and you've heard about this accidentally or intentionally, there are lobotomies where people remove an entire lobe and people can still function.
Yeah, it is remarkable and not recommended. But certain times when there's been injury or, some severe reason for something like that, it's pretty amazing. People can do pretty well.
All right, I hardly know her. If you had to switch fields of study, but within neurosciences, what would you choose research if it was not eating behavior related?
Yeah, so I think within kind of still keeping in kind of motivated behavior and reward, substance use disorder is definitely a topic that I'd be really interested in. But if I were going to get, really different, I think thinking about like consciousness and kind of deeply human experience, where I have to really change my area completely and use different kinds of techniques and different kinds of subjects and ask those different kinds of questions. I think that would be interesting.
Unrelated to neurosciences, so my chair has started losing its pressure on holding it up. Like we could time lapse this stream where I slowly sink and then I shoot up again, and I'm like a Jack in the Box popping up during the stream. So if anyone sees me going down, you're not having a stroke. That is real. My chair is actually failing on me. So heads up on it. All right. Heard much about texture eaters. This is from Laurie. I used to have I used to have to peel/skin strawberries to eat them. The bumpy texture would make me gag. Can't have the pulp. I have to cut my grapes in half. The burst makes me gag. That is interesting. So that's not a taste receptor. That's like a mechanical force.
Right, yeah.
All right, sorry to interrupt because I got to tell you something about this. You're going to have to shoot the guys wearing black with bullets at close range. So hold the shoot button, and one of them's going to drop a blue card. So hold the A button.
Okay.
So you can shoot the dogs if you press both buttons down.
Shooting dogs, man.
Sorry, I didn't warn you about it.
These narcs.
They're drug dogs, it's fine. So hold the A button, not rockets, but bullets.
Okay.
And you'll shoot the guys in black, and one of them will drop a card, and it's random number generated, so... Yeah, but it has to be bullets. So if you hold A...
Okay, hold it down. Okay.
Yeah, there you go, blue card. All right, out the door. That's actually a pretty good drop. Great. We'll take that.
Okay.
All right. Oops. Sorry, textured eaters. That's an interesting thing.
How do I make it?
Should be there. You grab the card?
Oh, I thought so. Okay.
Hitboxes, Nintendo, right. Nancy Reagan. Oh, man. I shouldn't open another one with a half hour left, but so it goes. All right, so we were talking about texture eaters. What do you know about the texture response?
So that is a thing, for sure, and people have preferences and aversions that are texture-based. Texture is different from taste. We would call that a trigeminal, it's somatosensory, right? So it's really your sense of touch, not your taste receptors on your tongue. But that is a super important part of eating, of course. There's been some debate about whether, we have maybe more than the 4 or 5 basic tastes that you see in the textbook, and fat taste is one that people talk about. And there's this argument over, is that really a taste or is it just texture? So texture can be very important.
Texture versus taste, the nature versus nurture of eating. That's an awesome question. All right. Text, and I don't know how many of these serious questions, but talking about lobotomies. I'm over here eyeballing my 2-foot-long Phillips head screwdriver, thinking about DIY lobotomy, and now you're talking me out of it. Diana, do you want to give any advice to Texans?
Definitely not suggested. People do all kinds of weird stuff, man. So there are people who have done that kind of thing. Tray penning. This is what reminds me of that. So this idea that like drilling a hole in your skull and kind of like letting it breathe, letting your brain breathe.
Jump over this.
Okay. Tap. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that has been, it was, early on explored in like very early neurology and psychiatry as like potentially treating things. But there have been people in history who thought it was just like a good thing, sort of mentally, spiritually, to do that.
Yeah.
It mostly is just a way to, possibly end up getting an infection in your brain. So don't do it.
Wow. Yeah, the whole lobotomy thing. So that was an early Nobel Prize in medicine and physiology, and it was later the person that got it like retracted a lot of what they were doing, right? If I'm not mistaken on the history on that.
Yeah, like lobotomy as a treatment for anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of our famous cases in history that we know about that have taught us a lot about brain areas that do important things. There we go. Have been from studies where someone's brain was partly removed or destroyed, lesioned, right, on purpose, like patient HM, where his hippocampus was destroyed. But that was to treat epilepsy. Like, and there have been, these types of cases where they definitely took like a very brute force approach, but it was because there was something going on that really needed kind of radical attention. And his epilepsy was very, very severe. He couldn't function normally at all without some kind of big intervention. And unfortunately, we did not have drugs or other approaches. But lobotomy was different because
Sorry
they were.
To follow up on that. I looked up patient HM. It's Henry Mollison.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they had an abbreviation, but now it's acknowledged via Wikipedia. So if you guys are interested, HM is right there.
Yeah, after his death. And that's a tradition, is to not identify patients when they're alive, but if they wish and their families wish, then after death.
After death. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah,
There's a story if you guys are interested. Oh, man. Sorry, I've been distracted. How's NARC going?
I'm walking along a bridge.
No, you are sauntering.
Killing some people.
Look at that. Look at that. That is a saunter.
Yeah.
All right, let me catch up on a few of these. Texan, how would you respond if I told you I cured my Crohn's induced food aversion and my issues with my mother with profound psychedelic trip? Texan, we actually talked about that earlier. Psychedelics for drug treatment, like in terms of drug addictions, but also potentially in terms of food, which is understudied or maybe not studied yet, or will be. All right. Misadventures in Astro. Sorry, catching up on this a little bit. First time chat, welcome to the stream. Thank you for joining us. Click the follow button. Also, if you have any additional questions, throw them in chat. But Misadventures in Astro, my kiddo is diagnosed with sensory processing disorder, and he's picky about good textures, fabric texture. Oh, I'm assuming that's food textures, fabric textures, all sorts of textures. If you go to the bottom, you can walk by all this.
That'll be much easier.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, that's interesting when a sensory processing disorder is not just like food, which is very different than touch processing. I mean, is that the same neural pathway, or what does that suggest?
Yeah, so we do have some of the same, some convergence of touch and somatosensory information happens no matter where it's coming from. So there are some pathways in the brain where it kind of all starts to come together, whether it's from your toes or your mouth, right? So yeah, it's not implausible at all that these things would happen together. And obviously that's tricky, right? And how do you deal with that?
And I apologize. I completely failed to coach you through this level, but there were cars along the way.
Okay.
You've gotten in, but go.
Oh well.
It's fine.
Just casually walking across this bridge.
It's the bridge.
Well, there we go.
Slow as hell. I apologize.
Okay.
All right.
I'm a relaxed NARC.
Texan Space Agency, how high can you roundhouse kick? Who was this question for and why? Was that on your expected list tonight?
No, did not expect that.
Man.
Yeah, I think zero roundhouse kicking for me.
Oh man. Me as well, but back in the day.
Yeah, maybe 30 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a challenge for next time. So you're gonna go to the door on the far right.
Oops.
And get hit by a car. It's fine. It happens.
And is that a deranged clown?
Yes, that is a clown with a knife. Don't you remember the 80s? That's the.
I mean, it was a common problem.
That's what makes this game great. I can kick a water bottle off a 5'8" standing bag. So go up and push left.
Okay.
And go in the silver safeguard door. All right.
Okay.
Another level down.
Okay.
My 5-year-old daughter can kick over her head. Fun factoid, Texan Space Agency is I'm actually a black belt in karate. So as a 16-year-old, I won the national point fighting champion for 16 to 18-year-olds.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so back in the day, I could kick straight vertical. Now I can sit here on a chair and play video games. So that's the way we go. Scuzzbot, gotta run. Great stream, Scuzzbot. Thank you for stopping by. Hopefully all your questions were answered. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. What kind of karate? Was a very Americanized Taekwondo. So yeah, it was. I mean, it was still head contact and body contact and things like that. So yeah. I can probably kick over a 5-year-old's head. Okay, so here you're gonna shoot the Rambo-looking guys with bullets.
Okay.
So hold the A button, shoot them, and then you're going to turn around and the Rambo guy will come from the left. And you're going to shoot them. You got to let them get kind of close, which is dumb as hell. I don't know why that works. Nintendo broke. There it is, green card.
All right.
Take it. Door. Perfect.
All right.
All right. Texan, Toy Story. Just catching up. Oh, Dr. Diana, do you believe in ghosts?
I do not. I believe that people perceive things. They believe are ghosts. I think that the brain is a very incredible organ that can do a lot of things. So.
That is an excellent answer.
Yeah.
I believe other people believe in ghosts. Is what she just said, which is perfect. All right, Texan caught up on one here. There's a lot of archaeological evidence for drilling holes in the head in one way or another.
Yeah.
Why is that a prevalent answer?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm familiar with that. There is historic evidence from way back, and probably an anthropologist would have a better answer for you. But we didn't always understand that, like what the brain did, right? Like some of our ideas about where emotions and thinking and stuff comes from, we've attributed, when you see this in our language, like to our heart as a place where emotion comes from, or our gut. And there's actually like some truth to this, that what's going on in your gut and what's going on in your other organs influences our feelings and stuff. But right, like it all really comes from the brain, our perception, our thinking, and so on. But we didn't always know that.
So you have this card. You're good.
Okay. Great.
All right, so yeah, shout out to Uncle Bill. Uncle Bill is one of the founders of the Knowledge Fellowship. There's a collective of educational streamers, whether it be chemistry, physiology, physics, biology, whatever it is. There's a lot of people that stream on Twitch. If you guys want to check it out, the link is in chat. Uncle Bill, thank you for using Nightbot to our advantage here. The Knowledge Fellowship, it has a whole bunch of people that work or at least stream and want to share their scientific knowledge via Twitch. Check those out. Follow those people. Also, we have about 15 minutes left in the stream. If you guys have suggestions on people we should raid, typically we raid educational streamers, but we're happy to raid anyone that might be interested in learning or knowing about the existence of Ask a Scientist Gaming. So if you have suggestions, put those in chat. All right. I think it's migraines, so much pressure that they just want to poke a hole in it. I've had ophthalmic migraines that have made my eyeball the drill press. That have made me eyeball the drill press. What's an ophthalmic migraine? Is that?
Yeah, so that would be migraines where a lot of the pain is happening around your eyes. Like kind of Thank you, guys.
And I mean, anecdotally, I could envision that being true. Someone's just like chronic migraines and they're like, I'm just going to solve it with a drill. The movie Pi. So you're going to go to the right here and you're going to come across Mr. Big. So heads up, you shot dogs tonight. Guess what? You're going to shoot a guy in a wheelchair. Here he comes. So kill everyone on the screen and the guy in a wheelchair.
Oh, there he goes.
Big, that's the drug dealer.
Wow.
So you're going to shoot him with a rocket.
Okay.
So it's the light tap. Yep. And he'll come back.
Right.
Sounds like a sinus headache. Are those two different things?
Migraine and ophthalmologic or ophthalmic migraine.
Yeah.
Those are not the same. Because sinus headache is going to be something that's happening specifically, because of pressure in your sinuses. Whereas migraine, as far as we know about migraine anyway, is happening in the meninges and the kind of nerves around your head, which is a different thing.
So you'll have to kill the guys on screen and then eventually the wheelchair guy will come back. So yeah, you might as well squat, shoot the dogs. They turn into puppies, so that's not killing them. So it's okay. Now, but you hit them with a rocket, so...
No puppies for this, not
No. They dealt drugs. They have nothing. They have no defense. All right, so one of my new favorite questions, and I actually got asked this by a student. I don't know if you've had interviews by CARE students, these first-generation college students that have interactions with professors. One of her questions, they come up with their own questions when they interact with us, was, if you could interview any guest alive or dead on Ask a Scientist Gaming, who would it be? So, Diana, if you're in my seat and you can invite anyone to play a video game and ask them questions, who would it be?
That's hard. There's a lot of people that would be cool to interview. I think, being a neuroscientist, I think I have to go with a neuroscience person and somebody dead. I think, I might go with Santiago Ramon y Cajal. He was a neuroscientist who was a Nobel Prize winner. He is, if you've seen ever like very beautiful black and white line drawings of neurons, they're probably his. He was working with pretty basic microscopes, and he is the person. Yeah, that looks like him.
Right.
He figured out that neurons were actually independent individual cells. At the time he was working, we knew almost nothing about the anatomy of the brain or even what neurons were. And there were people who thought that all these things that you could see on the microscope were kind of just one unit and not actually separate. And so he figured that out. He wrote several big volumes, kind of mapping out detailed anatomy of the brain.
I mean, so thinking about an individual like that, if we brought them on stream now, I didn't look at the timeline when they were alive, like presumably early 1990s.
Oh, yeah.
Like
he would not have a good time.
Well, that's the question. Like, if you're going to be like, okay, here's where you were wrong. Like,
That's true.
how receptive are they to current state of the knowledge? And like, it would depend on the person. It would depend on the stream.
Probably depend on the person, yeah.
I mean, it's that Isaac Asimov quote, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And so, like, he sees, a microscopy image of a neuron. Like, that's got to be witchcraft.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think he would have a hard time understanding even a lot of our techniques that we use today to do neuroanatomy are so different from what people were doing in the past. They were using chemistry that they didn't even understand. It's just sort of like, well, it turns out that if you put brain tissue in this dish, you can start to see some things. They didn't know why. And now we have, a lot of knowledge about exactly what we can do.
Yeah, the Hannibal Lecter strategy. That's fine. Oh, man. Cuddle Puppy, you got any tips for avoiding the malaise and extended headaches after doing hard cardio?
Oh, and no, I'm sorry. Don't have good tips about that.
Oh, no. Uncle Bill corrected me. It was Arthur C. Clarke, not Isaac Asimov, that said insufficient. I apologize for getting that incorrect. All right, so no advice for any hard cardio post-workout.
No.
I mean, working out is hard. It's exhausting. Oh, there you go. You got the gold card. All right, now I'm going to coach you through the start of this phase 2 of Mr. Big. You're close. This is the final
phase 2,
boss.
he comes back.
All right. After I walk you through this, then we'll dive back into some science related. So you're going to want to go to the top of the screen, and you're going to jump.
Oh my goodness.
And you have to rocket him in the hat.
Okay.
So you're going to want to get a good distance away from him, turn back towards him. You're going to do jump, which is tap B, and then on the way down, you're going to do a tap A, and it's going to rocket him in the hat. So, yeah, get some distance.
Away from him.
Jumping is a good strategy. So, yeah, I get like towards the other end. You actually have quite a bit of ways to get away.
Okay.
All right, so now stand still, tap B for the jump, and then tap, that was really close. So you'll have to do that and get him in the hat for the first shot. And this is the hardest shot against this boss, and then it's downhill from there. All right, while you're struggling to do this, Freelancer wants to know, would you ever want to go back to bench science work? How much bench science work do you do?
I do quite a bit. Well, I guess I should say my lab does a lot of bench work.
Yeah, exactly. Minions.
I still like to spend some time in the lab. I don't do everything myself by no means, but particularly...
Stand still. Yep.
Okay. I'm not
that was pretty close.
Quite mastering the jumping.
So my advice on the jump is, or any of the fast ones, is don't press the button down all the way. Just like tap it so it's enough to go. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and then rock it on the way down.
I'm gonna have to practice the timing on
that.
Yeah,
I know. I should have prepped you. I should have sent you NARC ahead of time. Oh, man. All right. I hardly know her. What's your biggest scientific accomplishment according to you? Think of the biggest moment you felt accomplished, not necessarily what got in the highest impact journal or most citations, but what made you feel accomplished?
So in terms of like actual scientific discovery, I think probably a big one for me would be partly because of the science itself, but partly because it was the first time it was the first paper that I had in my own independent laboratory that was just mine. I was not the only author on it. I had students who were working on it, but I mean, independent of my former advisors. And so this was a paper looking at glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1, and how it could act in locations in the brain where people had previously not considered it could act. And it was looking at particularly reward-related areas. And so that was, it was also something where several other labs were working on this at the same time, and I was first to publish it. So that's always exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was definitely a big accomplishment. Okay. This might take me all night.
Yeah. No, if you get too frustrated, I'll be happy to take over, but I think you're close. It says tap B, tap A when you're at the top of the peak. That was pretty close. Yeah. And it's just walk away from him, go back and do it. Your time is not bad right now. You're only at 22 minutes. So top end is 38 minutes. And this is the last major hurdle, so.
It's not always shooting when I hit the button. That's annoying.
If your kids talk shit about this when you get home, feel free to give them a copy of NARC, because this is terrible NES gaming. Thank you, Nancy Reagan. All right, you guys, we have about 6 minutes left in the stream. If you guys have any questions, Dinah Williams, expert in neuroscience of eating, metabolic disorders, eating disorders. We've talked about a whole lot of things tonight. If you guys have any last minute questions you'd like to ask her, do put them in chat right now. Also, if you have suggestions of who we should raid, feel free to throw those in chat. We're looking for typically educational streamers, but we're happy to raid anyone that might be interested in learning about Ask a Scientist Gaming. All right, Senior Builder, what is one of your favorite brain functions? Ooh, that's interesting.
One of my favorite brain functions. Well,
breathing is good.
Yeah, breathing is great. Eating is pretty awesome.
Heartbeat's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I think despite the fact that I study eating and that's considered as something called regulatory behavior, kind of those things that your body kind of has to do in order to live. I think sensory perception is probably a big favorite. That your brain is constructing the whole world around you all the time. That's pretty amazing.
Freelancer, you have raised the bar here. I'm just... Freelancer 47, Kiss, Marry, Kill, FSU Psychology. I'm presuming that says professors. Do not answer.
Oh, no.
Absolutely not. Oh, no. It's broader than that. Okay, Kiss, Marry, Kill, FSU Psychology, FSU Com, or Bio.
Oh, yeah, no, because the neuroscience program is interdisciplinary, and we have faculty in all of those.
Yeah,
so
there's no winning answer.
Yeah, no, they're all wonderful.
So go to the top of the screen. It'll stop the tongues. Those are tongues, by the way. The tongues from hitting you. So that gives you some room.
That's helpful.
Marry, Kill. Oh, the freelancer. Do I need to add this to my standard questions? Jeez. Man. Kiss, Marry, Kill. Yeah. Marry Psychology? I don't know. I hardly know her. Thanks, Dr. Williams. Great science, and you're a pretty good gamer. I barely know her.
It's mediocre, right? That's the tagline. That's all I gotta be.
That's our bar. Our bar is quite low, and you've done well. You've gamed the entire night, so I don't think anyone's upset. It's just a shame you have to close on this game. Fun fact for you, Diana, is I'm the former world record holder in speedrunning this game.
Oh, man.
And so it started out as a joke. This was a game from my childhood. I played it once on stream. But yeah, it's they challenge. Oh, you got it. Okay, yeah. So now it's rockets to the face.
All right.
No more jump rockets. So now it's
that's
phase
easier.
2. Yep. So you can go to the top of the screen. You don't have to be in the line of whatever those are. Flames. I don't know. Texan Space Agency. Dr. Williams, how many roundhouse kicks do you think Ask a Scientist Gaming can do before he runs out of steam? How many roundhouse kicks can I do?
Roundhouse kick?
Man. Okay, so now this vertebrae, you're going to do bullets. And so what I recommend is these 2 black lines be between those, and you're going to turn around and shoot them with bullets, and you're going to move up and down between these 2 black lines here. Yep. Okay, so you saw that vertebrae disappear and the points go up. So yeah, walk left. Get away from him.
Okay.
Jumps.
All right.
Is he hitting something or just doing it to the air? I do not know the answer to that question. So yeah, get a little bit of a distance, and you'll have to be down in this range. Yep. And so walk left, bullets. So hold the A button when you turn around. Yep, and just move up and down. And that'll shoot the vertebrae over time. All right, last minute questions. I think Dinah has maybe, 2 minutes left in this game? Something like that? Whichever gets him kicking on stream. I do not have the camera set up for standing. I should. Andy Opal, who's a professor of mass comm, he actually wanted to do the VR goggles and wanted to do stand-up gaming, and I tried really hard to get that set up, but it did not work particularly well.
That would be cool.
Yeah, we have 2 people sitting in front of one 6-foot green screen with 2 microphones and 2 cameras. It is a non-trivial setup. So, yeah, something we've Oh, there we go. So, 1 more hard one, and the last 2 are pretty easy. Oh man, we got into some Muay Thai, some kickboxing conversations. And is there anything else on my list I should ask you? Is there any question you were excited about that I didn't ask you so far?
I don't know. We covered a lot.
Yeah, no, we've been on a journey, that's for sure. Oh, what is the flat earth anti-vax equivalent in your field?
Oh, I think there are a few probably. Fad diets, and there's not just one, right? There's so many of those that people write books about how this is the one true way to eat, right? So that's always, and things like paleo and keto and the ketogenic diet. There is actually a medical basis for that for certain things, but not for just life and health in general.
Gold card, nice. Right, great. Mr. Big is dead. Now you're on simple forfeiture the level. Collect the gold, but also go to the door because that's all you care about. I'm holding out for the gummy bear diet. This gummy bear diet thing.
Well, there was a guy who decided to sort of prove that you could eat nothing but junk food and still lose weight, and so he did this kind of self-experimenting thing where it was the Twinkie diet, and he ate just nothing but junk food, but a small amount of it, and lost weight. So yeah, I don't know. You could try the gummy bear diet. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it.
Huggy beer, it's up to you. It's one data point. Let's see how this goes. You can publish those results in the Journal of Anecdotal Evidence. All right. Well, Diana, congratulations. You can put your initials in there. You've won the war on drugs. $1 trillion was not necessary. It turns out we just needed to play some NARC on a Wednesday night while drinking. So
there we go.
All right. Oh, man, there's a list from Uncle Bill. All right. We'll take a look at it. Do you have any thoughts on Optavia, weight loss meal plan?
I don't know that one.
Yeah, I would definitely do your homework on any weight loss. I mean, there's no right answer. Otherwise, the community at large would know about it. Presumably.
Exactly. Yeah. There's, in general, what folks say who really study, weight loss in humans is that the best diet is the one that you can stick with and be comfortable with and live with. So, and they're truly, humans have evolved. We live all over the world in all different cultures with all different kinds of foods. There's not like one true excellent diet.
Mm-hmm. No, it turns out humans are hard, brains are hard, eating disorders are hard. We've learned a lot tonight. All right. Well, Diana, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot. It's been really active in chat. Thank you all for your questions. Any parting words for the audience?
Oh, thank you, everybody. Some awesome questions. This was super fun. And, stay interested in neuroscience. Brain's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Brain. I think therefore I am, and brain does everything. So it matters to all of us. So we really appreciate you taking the time and hopefully had some fun playing. We did Untitled Goose Game, which is kind of fun, and then Zelda and closed with NARC, and you won the war on drugs. So we'll call it a successful night across the board. All right. Again, anyone that's joining for the first time, Ask a Scientist Gaming. Typically we have a guest on every 2 weeks. Unfortunately, most of my guests are faculty, which turns out 2 weeks from now is finals week at Florida State University. And then right after that, we have the holiday break. So it's going to be very hard for me to schedule one. So our next official stream will probably be January 10th. So it's going to be over a month from now. Freelancer, thank you for the follow. You get notifications about future streams. I'm going to try to talk Eugene DePrince into running a NARC 2-player with me sometime in December. We'll see. And I might have a computer scientist on sometime during the holiday break who's visiting me actually with his family. So we'll see, but next official stream will be January 10th, and the guest is to be determined. So thank you all for joining. It's always a pleasure. Your questions take us on interesting journeys and make us, discuss really interesting things. It's not your standard question pool, but we really enjoy it. And so stick around. We're going to raid some kind of educational streamer. But yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys in January at the very least, hopefully maybe before then. But again, thank you as always. You're what makes this stream a lot of fun. So we'll see you guys in January.